All right, we have, we're going to turn that down a little. I want to thank everyone for their patience. We've given people a little bit of an additional opportunity due to traffic this morning. But I want to thank everybody again for their patience. Thank the members that got here. We do have a couple of members that have notified the chair that they would not be able to be here for some items that have come up in their district. I want to assure everyone that's come here to provide us information today that they will take a look at that. We are streaming this live, and we are it'll be recorded so it can be reviewed at a later date. I'm going to get us back on time. I'd intended to go a little deeper with introductions and opening remarks. So if members will give me the latitude, I was going to introduce each of our members, but I'll wait and do that when we come back after lunch so that we stay on time. But I do appreciate all of them being here. I think we have a great cross-section across party lines for the mission of this committee. And what we are trying to do with that is to provide, to take in information and look for better ways to apply the human capital and the financial capital that we as a state have available to us in order to provide people opportunities to get prepared and be part of the workforce of the future. There's some question it had been raised out in the public recently about the need to do this because of an article that said half the companies are looking to have layoffs. And in reading that article, those layoffs tend to be, or at least they were reflected in the article as I read it, in the management areas, if you will, white-collar jobs in management roles, clerical roles, which are ever important, but becoming less necessary now because of automation and data analytics and that stuff. So really the fact that companies are looking at layoffs in that area emphasizes the need for a committee like this and work to be done like this even more, because those individuals need to have opportunities to get recertified, to find their way into the workforce of the future. So make no mistake, we're not trying to invent something to do here. We have companies and organizations that will testify, public companies that will testify before us today as our first stage that will tell us about the needs that they have in their workforce. And we look very much forward to that. So the idea that we have today is for us to have this testimony for us. Our next meeting, we will look at more in depth of what is being done by some state actors to provide people and individuals opportunities for the workforce of the future. We'll look at some innovative ways to put them on the spot. I think the Marietta school system has a program. There's a school in Gwinnett that has it. There's some other people that want to talk to us. So that'll be the second meeting that we'll have. And then we'll have a later meeting to try to integrate all of the information we have and define a way that we can come up with a short, medium, and long-term solutions to better provide opportunities for Georgians to be part of the workforce of the future. So with that said, if again, the members would provide me the indulgence of introducing them all, at lunch, and after lunch we'll move on and I'll get us back on time. This morning we have quite an agenda, and I'd like to call Danielle Perry, the Vice President with the Georgia Chamber Foundation, as our first presenter.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me okay? Great. Okay, great. Thank you so much, members of the committee, for having me this morning. My name is Danielle Perry. I serve as the Vice President of the Georgia Chamber Foundation at the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. And I'm here just to kind of share a few numbers about what's going on in the state and hopefully give you a better picture of some of those workforce shortages that we're experiencing. So I'm sure many of you saw the governor's announcement a couple weeks ago about record economic development growth. Of course, you'll see the big numbers on the screen, but I think it's important to note that these jobs are 53% above prior economic development records. Investment is 94% above previous records. and that 85% of these investments and more than 30,000 jobs were outside of Metro Atlanta. Of course, as we're thinking about growth and opportunity and how we grow our state's economy, we want to make sure we're seeing that growth everywhere. If we're thinking about East, Middle, South Georgia, we want that growth. And we've really seen that this year, which I think is a true testament to the leadership in the state. And we're incredibly grateful for this incredible growth. Of course, this growth also means that we need more Georgians to be in our new jobs and in these new investments. So, Q2 of this year, we had more than 468,000 job postings in the state of Georgia. This is from real-time tracking that does this. Those top occupations that we're seeing are registered nurses, software developers, and tractor-trailer truck drivers. I'll say, too, that these three top occupations have been really consistent over the last year has been those top ones that we continue to see needing to be filled. Of course, you'll also note, too, completely different skill levels. If we're thinking about a nurse, a software developer, or a truck driver, all kinds of different credentials that we're seeing, but all incredible demand. Too, if you kind of look at the graph here, you'll see the first time we started looking at this was in 2020. So kind of before we're seeing that pandemic impact of what's going on. And you'll see too, again, just skyrocketing growth in terms of kind of the number of job postings we're seeing per quarter. You'll see there was a dip in 2021 due to the Delta variant, but still, incredible growth of what we've seen. And, as we're thinking about these job postings, what's going on, the demand from employers, there are about 100,000 Georgians on unemployment as of June. This is down about 60,000 from this time last year, which is great. But again, as we're thinking about number of Georgians on employment versus demand, there's a gap. And we certainly need to be able to think about how we get more folks in our workforce because it has to grow to kind of meet demand. This is a graph. I'm sure we can send this out too so you can see a little more in detail, but the beginning of the graph is 2008. So we're thinking of that Great Recession. You'll see that big gray bar was the Great Recession. That's kind of how it's marked here. And then that little gray bar you see at the end is more of the recession we experienced due to COVID. But if you look at the very beginning, you'll see there's been a deep decline from where we were in 2008 to where we are now in 2020. And this is our labor force participation rate. So this is the percentage of adult Georgians that are in the workforce actively. So we used to be around 68%, and June of this year we were 62.3%. So if you see this steep, slow decline, again, we're noticing that there are fewer people engaged in the workforce than there were back in 2008. You can see, too, that we're looking at compared to 2020, again, we're having an increase from where we were kind of in the deep days of the pandemic, but still, again, that steady downward decrease of people engaged is really what we're focused on. And at the same time, since August of last year, we've seen almost a 20% increase in those advertised wages that are being offered. So employers are certainly offering more compensation to individuals, but we are still seeing, again, that decline. So, of course, this Higher Education Committee, we want to kind of focus on a little bit about higher ed as well. On average, the state spends around $100,000 for every student, and we know that higher education credentials increase those work-life learnings of Georgians. You can kind of see the range depending if you enroll in a certificate, associate, those different levels. And of course, there are always outliers with different occupations, but this is the average from the Governor's Office of Student Achievement on what your earnings are if you do gain credentials. So we know that individuals that do pursue higher education have more financial resources available to them and their families as they think about buying homes, enrolling their kids in schools, and doing softball on the weekends, all of those things that help to make our communities vibrant. Looking at the class of 2019, we saw that around 50% of graduates did enroll in education in Georgia and post-secondary, and another 10% enrolled out of state. 2 years later, they are still tracking this data and found that now 53% of graduates are enrolled in post-secondary. 2.6 have actually already earned a credential, and I think the key point to note is that 43.9% that's unknown. Again, as we're thinking about that labor force participation rate, we've got around 40% of the, adults that are not engaged in the workforce. And, we see this 43% here. We've got to make sure that we're capturing that 43%, making sure that you're enrolling in higher education, getting involved in the workforce, but that unknown is not exactly the place that we want to be with that kind of large percentage. So again, I hope this is helpful in terms of kind of showing the big picture of what's going on in the state. Record economic development growth, huge demand from employers to continue to hire more individuals, get them engaged, but we are still seeing a disconnect in terms of individuals getting from our K-12 schools and getting into our occupations. So that's all I have this morning. I'm certainly happy to take questions or connect afterwards, but Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, and we'll take a couple of questions. We're going to try to stay online time-wise and take our questions over, but we'll do that. With that, is that Secretary of the Committee, is that you, Representative Bentley? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Ms. Perry. Thank you
morning.
for your presentation. My question is relating to the, I don't have my glasses on
Sure.
at this moment. So did I read that correctly, that it was over 468,000 jobs that were open as of February of this year?
So it's 468,000 over the second quarter. So
Okay.
that's March through June, it's Q2.
And 155,000 Georgians that are receiving unemployment as of June of this year.
Yes, ma'am.
That is a huge
Yeah.
divide.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
of course.
I don't see who's attached to numbers, so number 25. Is that Chairman Parkle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the numbers. So labor force participation rates is something I've tracked for some time. That is this is a number that is important.
Yes.
As most of us know from Econ 101, unemployment rate only tracks those that are actively looking for employment. Labor force participation rate looks at the number of people that are actually adult-aged in the workforce. 38% of adults are not engaged in the workforce. 38%. Are you aware of a deeper dive into that data to find out which would seem to be that will be the holy grail for how we encourage those people back into whether they've been there into the workforce? Is there a deeper dive into where they're at, what they're doing, besides just the raw data is super important, but a deeper dive below the surface into who they are, the circumstances, so that we might better incent them or find them to incent them to join the labor force?
Absolutely. And I think to your point, this is something that is that holy grail if we could find these folks. There is some data available in terms of if these individuals have maybe a disability and if there's something that we could, continue to offer either from an employer perspective or from a state perspective to help bridge this gap, make sure they're able to. We can certainly kind of do some additional digging on this and provide some resources back to the committee if that would be helpful, and maybe what this 38% looks a bit more like and how we may be able to better reach them.
Quick follow-up, and I know the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they do a fine job in gathering this data, but I'm unsure as to how much deeper they go on the data that they can provide. But it seems to be underlying data would be the most important here in our committee's business.
Thank you. We're going to move on if we can't. We had one more. Wait. We like to follow up. Let me just two things. Define the number there for us is this is working age population, right? So this is not people that would be you'd be considered retired. They're not part of that 38%, correct?
Correct.
So that age range is,
It ends at 64 years old, and I believe it starts at age 16, but I'll double check.
and it eliminates those that are actively involved in post-secondary education or not?
I will double check. I don't know that it does for sure, but we can double check. I believe it starts from 16 to 64 is how they define the working age population.
Yeah, so that is part of that. I would wonder how much of that whole population is in school. But and just to follow up and bring this together, because we'll bring you back for the second meeting, because this is where we're going to try to connect. Is what Chairman Perkle brings up is what is our problem, and what we're trying to get to the bottom of is it's like the unknown people up there. The 38%, we don't know them, so we don't know why they're not working. We don't know if they're worn out sometimes. We don't know if they think they're undereducated for the employment. They don't know that the Hope Career Grant exists. So those are all the things that we need to find out and see if there's that. So thank you very much for that. This is what we wanted to get from these early presenters is some of the groundwork for it, and then we'll hear it from employers. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Tim, you would be next. Tim is the director with Educated Workforce for the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. We'll move straight to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tim Carroll, Senior Director, Educated Workforce, Metro Atlanta Chamber. I provided a printout that you should have in front of you. And I gave you this because I'm going to move through some data points very quickly this morning, and looking forward to discussing these in greater detail at a later meeting. But I wanted to touch on a few key points this morning that I think will be relevant to what you're going to be hearing about today. We think about jobs and the job market in three sort of buckets. Where are the open jobs now? In other words, job postings, the help wanted, right? Where are those now? Where are the occupations that are highest in demand, those very specific occupation types? And then where are the industries themselves going? So if we looked at the top 15 industries in Georgia, what is the trend for those industries so we can get some sense of where those job postings and future growth would align with the work that this committee is going to be doing? For instance, on page 2, you'll see that we go through some job posting by industry and where demand is by industry. So things like administrative services, healthcare, retail accommodation, food services, all very strong. The only one of these top 15 that's trending downwards is public administration. This is just in job postings as to what jobs are available right now. And we've given you a 5-year trend line from 2017 to 2021, so you can kind of see that up and down growth there. On page 3, looking at our top industries now, there's 4 industries I want to highlight because Georgia has a very specific strategic advantage in these 4 industries. If we compare these 4 industries to other similarly demographic states, Georgia employs more people in these industries than those other areas. So I want to point those out. Those are healthcare, IT and professional services, construction, and finance. So what that would mean is, if you were looking at things like finance, you would expect to see Atlanta, Chicago, and other areas like very high, so in Illinois and Georgia. But you might not find like I'm going to pick on a state. We're not going to find the South Carolina or Alabama necessarily high on that finance one. So we're saying that Georgia has a very unique advantage in those. That's just to give you a sense of where we have some strategic advantage. And hopefully this will all add up as I go through this. On page 4, we're looking at Georgia's overall change in total employment. And this is over the last 5 years. Keeping in mind those items you see in red, those are those unique strategic advantage industries. All top 15 industries had a 4.8% growth in total employment over the last 5 years. 4.8%, keep that in mind. And you'll see that hard line at 4.8% that some industries are way outperforming that total employment. So this is important when we think about where we're going currently for the future, things like construction, IT, healthcare, and finance. Again, way above average for where total growth in industries is happening. Moving on from industries now to the specific occupations inside those industries on page 5, we'll see that, on page 5, again, it's just that giving you the fine detail on that above average industries and how that actually shakes out. So the 6 of the top 15 that are well above 4.8%, and then the 4 of those top 15 that are underperforming compared to their peer industries. Moving on page 6, we see that even though those occupations that were decreasing, we had some occupations that were declining before 2020. In 2018, 2019, we had some of these very specific occupations that were in decline that all erased once 2020 hit. Every occupation in our top 15 all took an upward turn. So if you think about, even if you have an industry like food service and accommodation, that maybe total employment has kind of been declining, it doesn't mean that they've had problems with labor shortage. So that's where you see the imbalance happening. You have maybe an industry that isn't in large growth in the top 15, but the job postings are very high, indicates that you probably have very hard to fill positions. And those would be the very visible job postings, help wanted, that we're seeing across the state. I'm going to move on to page 7. We want to look now at how total employment for these occupations. So now when you're thinking about the specific job, how do those stack up across? And on page 7, by these top occupations, by type of occupations, we see some light grouping. So even though office administration postings are still really large and the employment is still really large, you can see over time it's declining. So it still dominates total occupation, but that is an occupation that has been slowly in decline and continues that particular decline, versus transportation and material moving, which moved up from number 4 in 2017 to number 2 now. So you have these areas that are continuing to increase. Others like finance management, IT, and others, even though they're lower on the total occupation list, they are continuing their climb up. And again, I'll be happy at a later meeting to go into further detail for some of these. On page 8, we're taking a deep look into these occupations. So when these occupations get down to the very specific job role, many of these do not require a credential or job degree. Now, this is a big asterisk, which is this is current job employment openings that we are looking at. How many people are employed in that very particular occupation? And this goes back again to what we see that tends to be very visible, and where those open positions are. Those positions generally don't require a credential or a college degree. However, what we saw on the previous slides was that is not where the trend for the industry is going. So I hope I'm making that clear. You have sort of two realities. You have what we see and what we're experiencing, and then where the industries themselves are growing. On pages 9 and 10, we're taking some deeper time. This is to explain what employers are doing on tackling some of these job shortages. I wanted to show some of the graphs that we track and use when we're working with our companies around skills-based hiring and upskilling of current employees, and how we're thinking deeper about what are those types of skills that are attached to occupations and where we're going. I want to leave you with some things about what the Chamber is doing around talent and what we're doing around skills. We will, of course, continue to produce these types of research. I included a link at the end of this presentation that takes you to some of our previous reports called Your Talent, Your Future, that highlights more of this information. We had a report in 2017 with a follow-up in 2020. There's also a talent pipeline report looking at student interest and aptitude. A variety of research at your fingertips. The Your Talent, Your Future report is going to be updated hopefully by the end of this year. So we'll have a lot of the information that I just presented to you that you have in front of you will be in a much more detailed report hopefully by the end of this year. So we're continuing that work. We're also expanding our education partnerships with our companies, particularly for those companies who are doing significant expansions, whether it's here or somewhere further outside of Atlanta. We try to be good partners and be involved in connecting our education and training providers with those companies that are expanding workforce, particularly with our technical college and university system and other training providers. We are doubling down on our talent pipeline work. We're expanding from everything about looking at family benefits and childcare to upskilling and creating really strong pathways for a lot of those entry-level positions that are on that one page that you saw, and making sure that those entry-level positions, even if they don't require a degree at the start, that there is a clear progressive stacking of credentials and experience for that new hire that can lead them to a much higher paying job 1 to 2 years down the road. I want to talk quickly, and then I'll end with this, about some recommendations and some initiatives that we'd like to see continue expanded that would keep these trend lines moving in a hopeful and positive direction. We were proud to support the work that the chairman and the committee did last year around needs-based aid and the Student Success Scholarship. The Metro Atlanta Chamber would, yes.
I don't want to cut you off there, but I am a little bit. We're going to get into that in the second meeting. If I
Sure.
could just, in the interest of keeping us on time of what we're doing in the second meeting, and I appreciate the mention of the one bill. But if you wouldn't mind, I'll give you to wind up. But let's get into what we're looking to do. Stay on task for the second meeting, if you don't mind.
Happy to. That was the end.
Okay, thank you. And again, I apologize, but I know we have some people. I feel like I'm too much here. I'm gonna try to keep us, reined in to the point of hearing, our issues and our things, and look further when we get to meeting number 2. Did anybody have a quick question for Tim before we go forward? Tim, thank you much. And I always forget the name you guys call this, but you had something that you've worked with some APS folks about aptitude, testing. So when we come back for meeting number 2, I'd love to, hear more about that, and I think the committee would as well.
Yes, sir. Be happy to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Staying on our schedule, we have the CEO of Kia Georgia. We'd like to welcome Stuart Countess to make his presentation.
Well, good morning, Chairman Martin and members of the committee. My name is Stuart Countess, and I'm President and CEO of Kia Georgia, located in West Point. It is an honor to speak with you this morning, and I appreciate the opportunity extended to share perspectives on the current and growing concern of the workforce shortage in our great state. For those of you that may not be familiar with Kia Georgia, we are an automotive manufacturing facility located in West Point. We operate a 5-day-a-week shift, 3 shifts operation, production model, and employ almost 3,000 team members directly. Including our supplier network, there's an additional 11,000 plus jobs. Our annual capacity is 340,000 vehicles per year that include the Sorrento, K5, Sportage, and Telluride. From a historical point of view, I think it's important to understand where we began in March 2008 with an application process to build an automotive team. At the time, unemployment in the region was running at a 13% range. The announcement of the online application attracted 40,000 plus individuals in 30 days to apply for a total of 1,200 jobs at that particular time. The trend of interest continued for many months, and with many individuals being hired, placed Kia on the map in both Georgia and the U.S., to date having produced over 3.7 million vehicles in this peach state. Individuals were and are still educated with newly needed skills, ranging from basic welding, painting, assembly processes to learning how to program robots. All of that being supported by the workforce development arm of the state and Georgia Quick Start. Throughout the years, we have faced a variety of economic and market conditions that affect automotive industry. As a responsible employer, we take deliberate measures to shield our team members and our businesses from a lasting impact that are out of our control. To date, no Kia Georgia team member has been laid off. This is indicative of one of our main core values and a recognition and acknowledgement that people are the heart and soul of our company. COVID-19 impacts have been felt across industries and businesses, generating numerous challenges then and now. Temporary production shutdowns, supply chain crisis, workforce expectations, remote work, to only name a few. Industries and businesses that were used to working in a particular set pattern with some predictability were suddenly facing conditions not knowing what would happen the next day, week, or month. Flexibility became the new operable term. Our team had to utilize every available means to source and coordinate delivery of available materials and creatively utilize its human resources. I share these comments to let you know that we, Kia Georgia, know how to solve difficult problems. But equally, I believe manufacturers in the state possess the same knowledge and commitment to resolve the issues to keep Georgia working. Today, however, we are experiencing a new and somewhat unconventional supply shortage, that of an available workforce. We have studied, listened, reflected, evaluated, and collaborated in efforts to identify root causes and countermeasures to eliminate this concern. Unfortunately, this problem still persists. The pandemic has changed the way we work, live, and function as a society, but it has also changed what is influencing people as it relates to work. Work from home and remote work adopted during the pandemic have developed into attractive, flexible employment alternatives in today's workforce. Individuals have chosen to retire early, sought gig jobs, remote work opportunities in an effort to overcome childcare concerns, have more flexible lifestyles, less working hours, minimization of transportation concerns and issues. This has obviously changed the traditional model, especially in manufacturing. Believe me, I can't make a car from home. Coupled with growing opportunities for new businesses and record low unemployment, we have a labor shortage that is adversely impacting employers across the state. Many operations are trying to return to pre-pandemic outputs and grow their own businesses. But we're struggling with recruiting and hiring of capable, qualified workers. The competition for workforce has impacted retention rates as people move from job to job, disrupting what is again a predictable condition in the past. Even though we have implemented numerous changes and incentives to slow this trend, we are still feeling this dynamic. For a little bit of perspective, we normally fill our hourly positions by converting temporary workers to full-time workers. However, the current conditions pushed us back into a direct hire process, as was experienced back in the early days. With the addition of a fourth model into our factory this year, we had an opening for 450 brand new jobs. After 1 year of trying to fill those jobs, I still have more than 100 open. We have looked critically at ourselves as an employer to assess our employment experience and value to current team members and those we are trying to attract. We've increased wages, invested in on-site amenities, made changes based on team members' opinions. For example, we have recently announced that we will change our operational model from a rotating shift for 13 years to a set shift pattern. That is a huge change in our business. We have focused heavily on recruiting by hosting or participating in job fairs within a 120-mile radius. That's twice the radius I used to look for. We have continued to develop relationships with technical colleges and universities in our areas to promote Kia Georgia opportunities through our intern and co-op programs. Throughout this process, we have also learned a lot about the tendencies of graduating high school students. It is estimated that between 35 to 40% of high school seniors have no post-secondary plans after graduation. To me, that is a shocking number, especially when I have jobs that they can fulfill. Clearly, young individuals are making decisions about life choices at a later date. As society and parents, we actively promote continued education as a next step in a student's pathway to success. Academic advisors and counselors work with students to find the best school and career pathway for each cohort. But 35 to 40% have no interest, or they don't have academic ability, or they don't have the financial backing to support that. The question is, what will be their pathway? While this is unfortunate from the perspective of formal education, it is certainly a reality that exists, and one that I believe that we can and should review closer. What guidance are we providing this group of people? We are told that the general perception of manufacturing is it is not as attractive to students as other career options, that manufacturing tends to have a negative connotation. that it's dirty, it's unsafe, and a dead-end job. I invite any of you to come see what we do in West Point, Georgia. While there may be exceptions, manufacturing has progressed in capabilities and technologies, and discipline to those older factories has either shuttered them or they've revised what they do. Unfortunately, the perception lives on, and it's in the stories of parents and grandparents and many others, and we have to change that dynamic. So how can we transform those beliefs to reflect the current conditions? That is the goal of my involvement here today. What can we do as business and political leaders to make a positive change in the way our youth, future workforce views manufacturing as a career? I believe we must explore alternative approaches that accurately present manufacturing to students as an added choice for consideration. Can we create activities and programs through which manufacturers can engage directly with students in career centers or other functions to discuss possibilities that manufacturing careers could offer to their lives? This happens now on occasion through efforts of an inspired counselor or a teacher with a personal goal to make sure his or her students are aware of their options. But why should we not make that a standard for all cohorts, regardless of where they are in their educational process? Aside from an involved and caring parent, teachers are potentially the most influential individual in many of these students' lives. But most teachers, I would say, have a very limited, if any, firsthand experience at what manufacturing is about. I would submit and suggest an idea that manufacturers would be willing to host teachers and counselors throughout the year for week-long manufacturing experiences, giving them a firsthand look at what we do, providing them with the information to take it back to these students. Further, I will personally commit that Kia Georgia will take part in this process and that we will continue to do so for a long term. My suggestions are my opinions only. I hope you know that you will have others expressed today, and though they may not be congruent with these ideas that I have proposed, however, I am confident that you will find that we all have an interest in the ability to develop the workforce of the future. The economic engine in Georgia is strong and powerful, due in great part to the efforts of the Department of Economic Development. The Georgia Chamber has focused a lot of their activity this year on the war for talent, part of which is more than 50,000 manufacturing jobs, as Danielle just showed you, in the next 5 to 8 years. As more jobs come into our state, we are certain to see population growth, which will drive the need for growth in other measures, inclusive of housing, utilities, retail. The list is endless. We can ill afford to postpone the opportunity to educate our workforce on what their possibilities are. If not, we will be asking ourselves in 5 years, what did we not do? I appreciate your time and consideration, and I'll certainly be glad to answer any questions.
I'm sure it will not surprise you. You have a couple. Again, I don't know who goes with the numbers yet, but number 28.
That's me.
Rose
Thank you,
Rivera.
Mr. Countess. I have to tell you that is your message is compelling. I'm very thankful that you were here today. Your message is also quite sobering. I know that this is a concern that many of the committee members have. That's why why this special committee even exists at this point, is we want to find a solution. Find a solution for the sort of, and maybe I'm too close. What if I stay back here? Where'd you get that?
I stole it.
Well, you stole it from somebody. Yeah, it helps. That's great. Greatly helps. Thank you. It is a sobering, and the statistics, I think you said 33% of graduating high school seniors have no real direction, concept, or idea about what they will do going forward. The fact that that is even a possibility in this state is a tragedy. Thank you for being here today. I can tell you that I know that from my own experience and from speaking to constituents in my district, I've had a lot of folks say to me, parents included, that that our society has sort of romanced the concept of a traditional four-year degree, the traditional four-year college experience with the sorority and the fraternity and the whole 9 yards. That in and of itself is not a bad thing, but the fact that it has sort of eclipsed the concept of alternative education and advancing through our technical system. I'm grateful for what you do. I have 2 of my 4 children own Kia automobiles, so we are grateful that you are here in Georgia. And I can tell you, I think that you're going to have partners here on this committee in terms of dealing with these sorts of issues that you've expressed here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Earhart. You have some more questions. I want to follow the representative and say this. And I was going to say it in our beginning remarks as I set the stage for this. I think you've pointed out something. I think Representative Earhart has said it is the 4-year degree, the magic 4-year degree. You can get an education outside of college, and I don't mean anything bad about our TCSG system, our private college system, our university system. They're sitting out there in the audience. But out of the University of Georgia, I had a degree in management science and went to work for a software manufacturer. We built software. If you've been to the Microsoft facility, you're out in Redmond, Washington, it's a huge facility. It may even be bigger square footage, I'm sure it actually is, than your facility, and they manufacture software. So it's not a question, and I would love to have more from not only you but other manufacturers here to show us what your manufacturing facility looks like. It's not what you saw on the movies when they were building tanks in World War II, or building that sort of thing. People learn to manufacture things, and you go to a place and do that. There's a lot of people that go to the Apple $1 billion plus world headquarters that they're building out there that manufacture software that goes in those phones that we probably 9 out of 10 of us have in the room here. So thank you for doing that. Thank Representative Earhart for doing for bringing that up. Number 26, Representative Wiedauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo what both the chairman and Representative Earhart said. I think we could talk for hours. You'll find definitely a friend in me and everything you said. I travel the state talking about it. I think many people in this audience have heard me talk about the fact that these are honorable jobs. I toured Gulfstream last week. I'm a frequent visitor of the Georgia Savannah Port. Caterpillar's in my region. I know I've not been to your facility, but I know the facilities quite well, and thankful for what you guys do. Curious do you guys have data of your employees? How many of them are from out of state?
The last is because we're on the state line, it's about a 70-30 split. So we have about 30% of the people that are just sitting in that Lynette, going all the way down to the Columbus, Alabama side.
Because obviously with a 120-mile radius, I would assume you're well into Alabama a good bit.
We are, but I'd give you this example. We've gone all the way down into Albany to recruit people, and that's over a 2-hour drive. It didn't used to be that way, clearly. Again, 13% unemployment when we came there was a benefit. There's no doubt to a bad situation. But having to reach out, transportation becomes a big issue. People enjoy, and we see this quite a bit, especially a particular demographic. They want the lifestyle of Atlanta, what it offers, but West Point, LaGrange, great places to live, but it just doesn't meet their needs. So it's how do you attract them to move in that area? We have quite a lot of employees that do live in the Coweta County area. So it can range from Coweta all the way down to Lee County in Alabama, which is where Auburn is.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And here I am right here. Thank you so much. Kia is an exceedingly valuable member of the Georgia community. Thank you for being in our state. Thank you for being here today, putting a face to the problems we know we face, and actually offering one bit of solution that I wanted to make sure that we didn't gloss over. So you are here as an exceedingly valuable member of the Georgia manufacturing community. We also have some individuals here with the Department of Education. not just phone answers. We got some big dogs here in this room today, and the small little step you thought is one step that possibly could help start changing hearts and minds around the manufacturing process is to bring in counselors, our high school counselors. The 35 to 38% we saw actually, I mean, they're following in with the adult population, the labor force participation rate of the 38 missing individuals. And perhaps we can marry here the two together, industry, education, and let's get something done that, you know, if it's just a tour of West Georgia counselors in school systems in that area, 120 miles, 150 miles, whatever it takes. Your valued community partner, thank you for being here, and I'd love to see us get together on what we can do in addressing the problems. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. It really does bring up a lot of questions, and but I want to focus on the difficulty in filling your jobs. What is your minimum qualifications? How are your initial hires trained? Are you? Could you walk us through there? What those initial hires need? Are you utilizing technical college or doing your own training or?
It's actually a combination of all of the above. So we have different classification. We have a production team member and we have maintenance team members. So let me talk about maintenance first. Maintenance does require some background skills, hydraulics, electrics, that can go to help make our facility work or the robots. So we've partnered over the years, initially with Georgia Quick Start, and then we have a program with TCSG where we teach individuals the necessary skills. Effectively, they are getting a certification. We have people that come from the outside into that program and they become a potential employee, but we also have individuals within our own ranks that want to move from a production team member to a maintenance team member. So they can interview for that process, they get selected, and they get educated through that avenue. As far as a production team member, basically it's a GED or high school graduation, whichever way you want to look at it. What we need them to do is to simply come to work every day. We will teach you everything that you need to know. It's pretty simple. And I think that that's where, that's one of the challenges that we have right now as compared to 13 years ago when we started up that initial hiring class. It's just a different workforce expectation. I can't have you come to work 3 days a week. The line runs at a certain pace. So we often talk a lot about soft skills, and that is a challenge. It's just fundamental basics of I have to go to work at a certain time of the day. I'm going to get asked to do things. I need to be working in a collaborative way. There are some programs that we are aware of and have participated in to help teach those, but unfortunately it's something we have to continue to hammer home.
Would you be able to share what, if somebody with a GED or high school wanted to fill one of those jobs, are you able, is it public? Can you tell us what they would start? Yeah, would they?
Somehow knew you'd ask me that.
Well, I mean, I don't want to,
Sure.
I don't want to,
No, it's on a
I don't want to
website.
ask you to overshare in a competitive nature, but if they would start it here, and if they have I would think there would be a progression that would go through, and after you're in good standing in 2 or 3 years, you may be here, and I think that's interesting.
So it is posted on our website, but a starting direct hire team member is $17.25 an hour, which equates to about $36,000 a year. That's just base wages. Top out, which is a 3-year process, so they get a raise as long as you're performing satisfactorily. You get a raise every 6 months, up to 3 years, and at that point it becomes $26.40, which is about $55,000 a year. We offer, on top of that, full health care benefits, 401k system, they get 2 weeks of vacation. When you add all of those numbers in, that number gets close to doubling, fully loaded. From a maintenance point of view, yes, they make more because they have a skill set that is different. That's $24.20 an hour starting out, which is about $50,000 a year. And then top out, same thing, 3-year progression is about $31 an hour, which is a little right at $64,000 if I remember right. And of course, maintenance is one of those, if people like to work overtime, there's always overtime. So that's your starting base. I think.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I think the representative was looking for a little OT maybe there for number 24.
Well, I'm headed back to West Point, so you're happy to get in my car. Let's go. I think the interesting thing, if I might add, what businesses realized is we don't talk about those numbers enough. Those numbers have meaning, especially to parents. You know, if you want to get the child into work and out, they have a lot of significance and meaning. We have to find a way as business to really go out. This isn't, from my viewpoint, is a very experienced generation. I want my money now. I've got something I need to go get, a new phone, whatever the case is. So we've got to change our narrative in that, and that's part of why I say we need to, instead of waiting on the DOE, which I've talked to them enough about this, we need to be at the front. We're not going to just sit back and wait. We have to help them understand what we do. It's a good process. You just have to get somebody caught in and help them find their place. A little bit back to your point earlier. Most of these large businesses have education reimbursement programs, including ourselves. So if you don't know what you want to do, straight out, and I say this very openly, I have a 22-year-old that is one of these people that just changes course every few days. Companies will help you get there. And if you decide you want to go get a 2-year degree or you want to get a 4-year degree, there are a lot of services that you can use to your advantage. But if you don't, we can develop you into a career. A lot of the original people we hired back in 2008 through 2011, those direct hires, those are individuals who had no educational background, and many of them have gone from a production team member all the way up to some level of management. That's what you want to put into it.
That's excellent. You have a couple more questions if we could. I'm sorry. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am just so excited about everything that you're discussing here today. But one of the things that I didn't pick up on is that your boundaries stop at 200, about 200 miles. Have you ever thought about expanding and coming into the southern part of Georgia? Well, southern part of Georgia, because there are colleges and universities and what have you that could probably assist with getting the workforce that you want to come. But I know the problem is transportation. Picked up on that is a problem with some of the companies in Savannah. The people doesn't have transportation like to get to Gulfstream or to get to the port because they do not have cars. And I just think that if you expand your territory, you may be able to do something. One thing that I really like that you're saying is that the training can be done, but also the information that you have given us today, starting salaries and what have you, that is always something that is encouraging when people are in the job force and they're looking for jobs. The other area that I was interested in was you have people that are leaving the penal system. And are you hiring, are you recruiting those that have served their times? And they've served their time, but they do want to get into something and get a job.
So answering your first question, yes, we have gone into Southwest Georgia.
Southeast.
Or Southeast.
Okay.
Maybe not Southeast. I went into Southwest Georgia, knowing some of that particular area, but I'll take your point back to the Southeast. We do work like with our maintenance programs through the TCSG system. I mean, we advertise those, so they're a great partner to do it, but we can certainly always do more. Transportation, just a quick comment on that. Transportation works really great in the city of Atlanta.
Yeah.
But West Point, Georgia, or LaGrange, Georgia, those are some challenges that rural communities have. There are a lot of different ideas out there. There possibly are federal funding opportunities that can help support that and run a bus route. So those are being looked at through local areas, but it's certainly something worth considering also. To your other question, the honest answer is we've had discussions, but that's about as far as it's gone so far.
Thank you.
It is a recognized opportunity, though.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologies for being late. I was listening on my way down here, stuck in traffic. I had two questions. One, could you speak upon the role that automation has in causing some of the workforce challenges, including how that could potentially exacerbate future issues or potential benefits as well? And then regarding the current conversation, especially as you mentioned the benefits and the issues regarding transportation, could you also speak to different housing options in and around the plant in which the commute would be relatively shorter, and whether or not there could be ways in which certain housing options could be expanded?
So from an automation point to your first question, yes, I think any manufacturing business is always looking for automation. There's always this a narrative that exists that automation will eventually replace everybody. It can't. There's no possible way. I can't replace everything I've got to do to build a car with a robot. It's impossible. We do need, obviously, as we add automation, that's a skill up. You have to have someone who can be able to work with that robot, program that robot. We took people from the very beginning that used to work in the textile mills in our particular area and taught them how to program robots, and they do it even today. To your second question about housing, housing is an issue. It depends on where you are, and I'm certain that every rural area has a little bit different scenario. We do need to look for and develop solutions to that, whether it be dorm room type housing that people who maybe, for example, want to live in Atlanta on the weekends but want to travel down and work there. There are a lot of discussions ongoing about those. There are actually some models that exist out there where this has been successful. It usually is in the hospitality industry, so there are options there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just, in agreement with my colleagues, I said already, thank you for being here and thank you for being in the state of Georgia. But my question is relating to transportation. You kind of touched on that a little. Can you expound a little bit more on ideas or plans to address the transportation barrier? And one other thing that I've been talking with constituents in my district, transportation and childcare is such a major issue. And if they can get transportation or a way to have their children taken care of, they will be willing to come to work. So can you talk a little more about your initiatives to address the transportation barriers?
So from a transportation point, in Troup County, we've been engaging with the county commissioner and the mayors of the three major cities, West Point, Hogansville, and LaGrange. What are those opportunities of setting up some type of a bus route? It's not just about people coming to Kia, Georgia to work, but it's the Millicans that interface, the Duracells, and can they set up a bus route that's on some type of a schedule where people gather? It is being investigated. We've actually had some conversations with the senior senator Ossoff and understand that there potentially are some funds out there. So the city and county government agencies are looking to see what those opportunities are. Today, no, I can't tell you what they're going to do. I can tell you if you go back many, many years, especially in that particular area as a textile industry, there was a point in time, as I understand, there was a bus route system to get people to work. Whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing to do now, we have to fix transportation. We know we can get an additional group of people if we could just give them a reliable way to get to work. To your question about childcare, yes, I do think that that's still an issue. Hopefully we're going to see some changes as it relates to now kids are going back in school, but we obviously have to see what happens with COVID because that can turn the world upside down again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stuart, thank you very much for coming. I know you had a bit of a hard stop. I think you have somebody in town that you need to get back to West Point for. So we'll stop at this. But the last thing I guess I would want to ask is, have you thought, or would it be financially viable? I mean, I looked, I just did map. That's what I was clicking in the phone here. I mean, from where we sit right now without traffic, which is, magic from here to the airport. But at certain times of the day, South Atlanta is an hour. I mean, if you were 85 down around the airport, I mean, that area. Have you thought about, or has Kia thought about, like, van pools? Because this is sort of a shift time. Everybody that's going would be going at the same time and coming back. And the reason I say that is I remember, I don't remember it, but I remember my dad telling me about it, is when he out of high school worked at Lockheed. And that was North Georgia, in Alpharetta. And there were van pools that were done by individuals so that they all rode to Lockheed. That was a long way, in the day, if you will. So is that something that you've thought about, or might can consider? I mean, I don't know if that's just Kia. It could be with, Georgia, could work with you on that. But is that something that is a possibility?
It is
to
a possibility.
bring people from south, south of the Atlanta, area. I mean, that's an hour away. I mean, a lot of people drive. Believe me, if I come to my office in downtown Atlanta, I may be only 26 miles up in Alpharetta, but it's an hour away when I need to get there in the morning. So that's not an unreasonable commute. So I was just thinking about that, and then I'll just depart here. I love what you're saying, and we talked briefly at the manufacturers meeting. Is I want to look for ways at our next meeting to help you do. Everybody kids me about being athletic oriented and football oriented, but Kirby Smart doesn't sit over in Athens and just look for the folks that come over there to play football. He goes and recruits, and I think you have a great recruiting mind that you've set forward and put forward to us today. And I think we as Georgia want to be, your booster club, as well as these other manufacturers, and to helping you get the word out. That this is an honorable, this honorable job. It's an honorable profession. And by the way, for those that are going to school and getting upside down in debt when they're trying to get additional education, how about, working this set shift and taking a little school with your educational opportunities with it. So we want to be your booster club, help you recruit as well as these other folks. And I thank you very much for coming, and we look for going to the next stage with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on. We're a little bit behind, but we're going to get caught up because we're going to go quickly through. We had a spot for, and I'll let them go in the batting order they wish, but we had a spot if the university system, the technical college system, or the Department of Education wanted to just give us greetings. I know I've talked to all of you guys individually, and I know you're on board with working on this. So we just wanted to give you a minute, and it can be less than that now since we're behind, to just give greetings to the committee and let these employers know that what you have let us know already, that you're on board with this. Ms. Jones.
Good morning, Chairman Martin, members of the committee. Ashley Jones-May with the University System of Georgia. We appreciate your time today. I'll be quick since you're running a little bit behind. In addition to the work on behalf of the system, I do want to mention our 26 institutions. They're the boots on the ground, and they're really working to develop these academic programs to prepare our state's workforce, and they're working directly with industry partners across the state. I do want to highlight a few that we'll be presenting today. For example, Phoebe Putney Health System has been a tremendous partner to several health profession programs in the Southwest Georgia region, including Representative Bentley, Fort Valley State University, as well as Albany State University. Likewise, I know Gulfstream is in the audience and will be presenting. They've been an incredible partner to Georgia Southern, who's in the audience today, in supporting our Engineering Pathways program. I'd also like to highlight one more, Representative Earhart, in your district, Kennesaw State University, and their partnership with Wellstar. That was nearly a $9 million partnership with a 5-year commitment to double the nursing program. So we look forward to working with the committee. I do want to highlight, earlier this month, the Chancellor announced our Georgia Degrees Pay website. This folds nicely into the Workforce Development Initiative. It's actually a dashboard where citizens and parents and students can go online, and they can look at majors, academic outcomes, future earnings, and cost of attendance. So we look forward to working with the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And maybe in the next meeting, we'll let you or somebody
Present.
with the system do a little bit deeper dive into the, show us the dashboard.
Happy to do it.
That'd be great. Welcome, Mark.
Glad to be here, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for having us. TCSG committee members, thank y'all for being here. But TCSG is obviously super interested and excited about this whole conversation. We are the workforce development engine for the state. Every one of you has one of our institutions in your backyard. And so every thought that's made here is important, and every topic of conversation is important to us. We certainly are appreciative of what Stuart and our friends at Kia had to say today, and the relationship that we have with them is a great example of the relationships that we have with other manufacturers in particular, but just in general the workforce around the state. And so this conversation of workforce shortage and labor shortage hits us square in the nose every day. We hear about it at each one of our colleges. Our local presidents in particular on the local level get this. Certainly Commissioner Dozier gets this on a regular basis of how tight the labor market is, and how and I'll use the word desperate, because desperate is the right word in many cases, that our industry members are to be able to find the right workforce and build out that workforce pipeline. And so it is something we are focused on every day. We are working down at a college level, all 22 of our colleges, to have focused enrollment plans that are geared towards the specific programs, the specific skill sets for the specific industries that are in their footprint. And so we do have some global, what I'll call global statewide focuses. We've really been, and many really based on your feedback and your input, the governor's input in terms of some funding, but we really focused right now on healthcare and nursing shortages, CDL programs around the state that we're working hard at, manufacturing, and specifically also part of that is to include EV support with so much new EV work headed here to Georgia. Those are things that are right at the top of our radar screen at a state level, but I will tell you that at an individual college level, it's that local footprint that drives what they do. And so we hear this conversation on a day in, day out basis. We're also really expanding, begin to talk about, I know we talked about some in folks in incarceration, but we, on our adult education side, we've added a number of different options to be able to capture those folks who need to get back into the workforce, to start from that perspective and bring them into some of our technical education programs to get them in the workforce in a way that'll be productive for them. So we're continuing to look at expanding our adult education options. We're really also expanding apprenticeship opportunities thanks to the legislature with Senate Bill 379. I'll take a moment to briefly introduce Karen Kershler, who is our Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Development. All things WIOA that happen in the state run through her shop, and apprenticeship programs and other things that we are expanding come through her shop, and I think they're a critically important part of this conversation as this committee moves forward. So thank you all very much for having us. We look forward to being a part of this rest of this conversation.
Thank you, Mark, and we're going to work her to death on at meeting number 2 about showing us.
Well, that's why I introduced her, so that y'all know where the real power comes from here on that one. I knew she'd be a topic. So
thank you. I know. I don't. We'll go to the State Board of Education in. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Martin, committee members. I'm Matt Cardoza, Director of External Affairs for the Department of Education. We're excited about this committee and the work that we can do with y'all. Know that our school districts work closely with our Career Technical Agricultural Education Program. Dr. Barbara Wall will certainly be ready to answer any questions, make any kind of presentations possible. One thing she mentioned to me that we're excited about, that Stuart with Kia is heading up our 5-year strategic plan for career technical agricultural education. So he'll have a lot of input into that and how we can work more closely with manufacturing or industry in general, and ensuring that our counselors are also making sure that those jobs are available or out there. Unfortunately, we have a similar issue in teacher shortage right now as well. So trying to ensure that all students have some kind of career path in mind before they leave us and go into post-secondary or straight into the workforce.
Well, Matt, thank you very much, and thank you. We appreciate Superintendent Woods and all the entire department has done to try to I mean, y'all have done yeoman's work through as have all the local boards of education, through this pandemic. I know it's been a tough thing, and, we're mindful of what the governor, is doing with some of the additional GEARS money to help those learning. So thank you for bringing that, and we look to involve you in the next step as well. With that, we're going to move quickly. We're still a little bit behind, but we're going to give our microphone now to the president of the Georgia Student Finance Commission, Lynn Riley. I wanted to ask Ms. Riley to give us a little bit of what we do offer in terms of the ability to get these pathways opened up, but it's just going to be just a taste, if you will, because we're going to bring her back as well when we try to put the solutions together in meeting 2. But we'll tie what she has to offer us today with what we're hearing from the rest of our agenda, and hopefully we can connect some dots. President Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. I enjoy being here with you today and look forward to that collaboration. As other colleagues have mentioned, I think we can provide some insights into the programs that Student Finance already administers on behalf of our students that are looking to achieve accelerated or incentivized credentialing, whether it's a certificate, diploma, or degree program. What I've passed out today, and I'm not going into, but I provided for your insights to prepare for future conversations, is the HOPE Career Grant utilization rates. And these are the strategic industry areas that have been identified over the past decade where additional financial aid opportunities exist now for these high-demand careers. And hearing the conversations today, it's clear that there might be new high-demand careers that could be considered for inclusion in this concept, as the General Assembly did consider and in the past session, and now we have an 18th career field for law enforcement and criminal justice career grant opportunities. But Student Finance also administers dual enrollment, which allows CTAE students to receive some skill training while they're in high school. And the dual enrollment program also allows our high school students to receive training in early credentialing to accelerate themselves into the workforce in any area, but also in these high demand and strategic industry areas. Student Finance also administers service cancelable loans in military, public service, and engineering fields. That is another tool that we'll be happy to explore more with you as this conversation continues. Again, I'm happy to be part of the conversation. My team and I will provide data of utilization and trends in the different areas that we see, and partner with our public sector employers, private sector employers, to look for those areas where additional strategic incentives could be provided for our students. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, President Riley. Are there any questions for President Riley? We'll make this comment in the form of a question, then we'll take a brief break here. To the committee members and anyone listening here, I think this is probably, for all the wrong reasons, the best kept secret in Georgia. I mean, I think there are a lot of people in that 30-some percent, 35 to 40%, I believe, Mr. Countess said, that are leaving high school without knowing exactly what they're going to do, that don't realize that these Hope Career Grants exist. And then, not to make a political statement here, but when we talk about sometimes that we don't have needs-based opportunities in Georgia, these are that. I mean, there are also the people without a need, but and not saying that we can't have that conversation for a 4-year degree, needs-based work like we did last session. But this is something that we need to do a better job, each one of us individually, in our 180 districts and in our high schools, to let people know about. I just don't. It's come to my direct attention over the summer and talking with some people that there are just a lot of students that are graduating. These were put in place, it seems, for people getting back into the career field, right, to retrain non-traditional students, but they work for, traditional, if you will, traditional high school graduates as well. So we're going to, again, exercise this as we move forward. With that, we don't have any questions. We're a little bit behind. We were going to break from 10-minute break. We'll just do that now. We'll still take a 10-minute break. We'll be 5 minutes behind. Let's reconvene at 10:35. So we'll stand in recess till 10:35.
Okay.
Oh, never. Yes, I do. All right, let's begin to settle down and we'll get rolling. Yeah, we're just a minute or two late. We're still going to give you your time. Andres.
This morning. I also want to thank the Georgia Chamber for the opportunity to be here as well. I'm Andres Villegas. I head up the Georgia Forestry Association. It's a pleasure to represent the folks that we impact across the state, and pleasure to be with you to talk about labor today. We are the #1 forestry state in the nation, and I'm not sure if we can get this up on the screens, if it's available to come up on the screens. We do have some slides. Is it coming up? All right. Love to see it come up if we can. If not, we can. Mr. Chairman, we have a couple printouts. They're not completed, but we'll get them over here and passed out if that's okay with you. Went to sleep? Yeah. And I noticed I go to sleep a little while ago. We'll have it up in a minute here. If you'd like for me to just keep going so you can stay on time, that's fine.
Carry on, and
yes,
then
sir,
we'll try to get it.
Yes, sir.
By the way, and let me say this: all of these presentations we'll make available. We'll make them so.
All right. So yeah, but basically, you've heard me say this before. We are the #1 forestry state in the nation. That means we have 22 million acres of privately held timberland, 206 wood-using manufacturing facilities across the state, employing about 140,000 people directly and indirectly across Georgia. So we're a major force of employment, especially in rural parts of the state. We've got about 15,000 employees here in Georgia. Here in Atlanta. Companies that you're familiar with. Companies like Georgia Pacific Graphic Packaging International, and Westrock have their headquarters here as well. We generate about almost $40 billion of economic impact across the state, and almost $1 billion in tax revenues for the state of Georgia at different levels, and in support of industry of about $5.5 billion of outdoor recreation for all those hunters and fishers that are out there that represent us. So here are a few of our companies here. The most important part of this particular slide that we like sharing is the one that really shows the footprint across the state. We have the areas that are shaded in brown are all of our private timberlands. The white areas are either going to be urban or agricultural areas. And then all of those circles, dots, triangles represent all of our manufacturing assets across the state. So you can see that when we think about Georgia and we think about forestry, we're #1 for a reason, because we really reach across almost every single county, every single community. And in most of these places where we have manufacturing assets, it's meant that we pull people out of poverty into the middle class. And it's not just for a short period of time. These are generations of families that have been able to buy a house, buy a boat, and, send their kids to college. All these things that we identify as being an important part of the American dream, an important part of the middle class for a lot of different people. There's a lot of diversity in our sector too as well. We typically are hiring local, and so our mills reflect what that local population looks like across the state too as well. That's a question we got to hear a lot in the last legislative session. So, and then of course big names that anchor our economy in the state, as well as anchor the things that come into your home every day. The cereal box, the box that's holding your Coke cans, your toilet paper. Things that we all use and our families use every single day that are coming from the trees that we grow in this state. It's an incredible story and one that we want to keep going. So we're #1 in privately owned timberland, but that means we need foresters. These are the people that go out and work on boots on the ground. The labor in this sector is changing a good bit right now. We're going from foresters who traditionally would go out and walk the land or ride the land to be able to count the trees, understand how to manage it and keep it sustainable, to more so a lot of drone technology, a lot of kind of external technology that's letting us read the land better, understand what we have a little bit better, and manage it a little bit more remotely sometimes. But all of that is the next generation, if you will, of how we're managing land, and it's given us the opportunity to also have a more technically diverse and more skilled labor base. We're also seeing that there's a big shift in our four-year colleges. ABAC shifted from a 2-year forestry program to a 4-year forestry program. University of Georgia is considered to produce some of the best foresters for forest business in this country. A lot of them end up going working for banks or big investment firms that have assets that they're managing for government pensions or teacher retirement systems, those types of things. Even foreign teacher pensions and other government Republican pensions invest in our timberland here in the United States, and they need good analysts that are coming from our 4-year and 6-year schools and advanced degrees. Where we have a little bit of a gap, though, is that kind of dirt forester, the one that spends 2 years and doesn't want to spend 6 years at UGA in Athens or in other places, and really just wants to ride in a truck every day and wants to go out and be in that environment. And so that's an area where we need a little bit more help in terms of making sure that we're generating those types of foresters for ourselves too as well. We harvest more timber than any other state in the nation, about 2 million truckloads a year. It's a massive number for us. But we know that this is an area where we are not efficient. In Georgia, we have the lowest truck weights of any state in the Southeast and one of the lowest truck weights in the nation. That means we're carrying less on every truckload. That's not an efficient place for us to be. It's just like if you have an SUV and you got 6 kids, but you can only carry 4 in that SUV, right?
Remind the gentleman to sit in the House Transportation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We had to touch on that one a little bit because it is an opportunity to address labor for us. It means we need thousands more truck drivers, essentially, Mr. Chairman. So thank you so much.
If I were a judge, I'd say you tied that in nicely.
Yes, sir. Thank you. But the other key point for us is we're paying more in insurance. I know this is an insurance committee as well than most states. And then if you compare where we were last year to this year, it's costing us about $107 million more to haul the timber that we haul normally, those 2 million truckloads a year, than it was just a year ago for us. It's a lot of things. It's fuel, it's labor, it's a variety of different things. If you look at what we're paying truck drivers, we've gone from an average salary of, say, $45,000 or so up to about $65,000 in just an 24-month period. So a lot of inflationary impacts there. The cost of a truck has gone from about $120,000 to close to $200,000, truck and trailer combos. And so that's if you can buy them. And so there's a lot of inflationary pressures on this particular part of our sector. And here you can see quickly, and I'll blow through it quickly, but obviously this is where we sit in terms of weights. We have a distinct disadvantage against other southern states in terms of how much we can put on that truck. That means we need more drivers than other states. And those drivers are in high demand because we have a very active port. We have tons of warehouses all up and down our interstate systems. And so we're in a very constrained labor market for drivers. And drivers, quite frankly, it's a lot easier to pull something from a warehouse to a warehouse or a warehouse to a store than it is to go into the woods every day. And so it's not necessarily the first thing that people sign up to do every day is to drive a log truck. So there's a challenge for us in that space. On the seedling and reforestation side, we're planting about 200 to 300 million trees a year. A lot of that's with mechanical systems that are semi-automated, I would say, across South Georgia, but we do use a lot of hand labor in North Georgia for replanting. We plant more trees than any other state in the nation and probably more countries around the world, and that's something that we should all be proud of. Each one of those trees generates enough air. This is a U.S. Forest Service stat for 2 people a year. So somewhere between 400 million and 600 million people breathe clean air because of what we do in the state and in our tree planting efforts. That's more than the population of the United States. And then on the manufacturing side, we've seen it. You guys have felt it. And if you went to go buy labor or toilet paper lumber or toilet paper or anything like that over the past 2 years during the COVID crisis, making these things hasn't necessarily been easy for us. Part of that was related to issues that we see happening related to COVID. But another component of it, as we see, is the pressure that we're seeing from investment happening in our state. The forestry community is excited. We want Georgia to grow. We want to have, as we heard from the CEO of Kia earlier today, we want to have those types of projects here in our state. Those help benefit us too as well. But everyone around those facilities is nervous because those facilities employ a lot of people and maybe have a little bit more flexibility in what they're able to pay. They're not producing a commodity. They're producing essentially a luxury good, vehicles, if you will. And so in many senses, that gets people nervous. Where are we going to find our employees 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when we've got other competition in that space? And so a lot of thought about how do we prepare for the future in this particular space is really where our folks are thinking. But we're number one in making things out of pine trees. But we also have 2 or 3 of the largest hardwood mills in our country producing Starbucks paper cups and pallets and a whole variety of other things that we're producing that we're good at here in the U.S. And lastly, we see our continued growth being really good for us. This state exports more forest products than any other state in the nation. About a quarter of the nation's forest products leave out of Savannah or Brunswick. That means that there's babies in China and Europe and South America that are their diapers are made out of the trees we grew and the things we manufactured in this state. It's an awesome position to be in. Savannah is the number one export port for all goods in this country. A lot of it on the back of forest products. I think it's 3 out of the top 6 or 7 products that are exported are forest products. And so we want to continue that engine and keep it going for the port too as well. So as we think about where we're at in the forestry community, how do we sustain or grow that 140,000 jobs? Last time I spoke to this on behalf of the Georgia Chamber, we had the opportunity to speak to this committee as well. We said we wanted to do a workforce study. So our foundation went out and actually started funding that study. We hired the Carl Vincent Institute of Government at the University of Georgia. They've done a lot of work for that. Actually, our friends at the port suggested that we do that as well. And they're doing a 3-pronged study. One, looking at harvest and haul. They just recently have the preliminary data that you're going to see here in a few minutes. So letting us know how many loggers and how many truck drivers we need in this state now and in the future. The second one is looking at forestry. How many foresters do we need, boots on the ground, considering what's happening in technological changes and investment in the sector, even large tracts getting smaller as sales happen, and then also forest product manufacturing. And we asked them to answer these questions for us in 3 different ways. The results are still preliminary, so they're not completely polished, but I'll give you a glimpse of that here in a few minutes. But we wanted to know what's our demand for labor today, and what's it going to be in 5 years. So give us a glimpse of where we're going. And then the second question was, where is that demand? We may need a lot of truck drivers in Waycross, Georgia, and only a few in Rome. Or we may need a lot of loggers in Cuthbert, Georgia, and only a few down in Swainsboro. Those questions for us absolutely matter because we need to know, and we want to help you decide where resources need to be allocated to address our most pressing labor issues and the number one forestry state in the nation. And so those are the questions. Where are the jobs? What's our need today? And what's our need in 5 years? We also haven't been sitting on our behinds on this one. We've been working really hard too as well. We've engaged with Georgia Public Broadcasting to do a lot of 4-H, FFA, and a lot of other groups to push that idea of careers. And to the chairman's point earlier, we focus very heavily on, what can you make in our industry? Our industry has changed a lot in the past 30 years, really. It's not your grandparents' sawmill or pulp mill. Quite frankly, we're extremely advanced. The way we manage land is off of a computer. It's off of GIS data. It's off of aerial LiDAR data or laser data that comes from satellites and planes. The way we manage our mills, hands don't typically touch a piece of lumber in our facilities unless there's an issue or unless it's a byproduct of some sort that needs some special attention. But, our industries are built to be safe, and that's getting people out of the process, not getting them in the line of fire. And so there's a big focus on that. I had a conversation with someone from one of our Fortune 100 companies here a few months ago in Atlanta, and they said, Andres, the reason you have a labor issue is because you just chew people, you bring them up, you chew them up, and then you spit them out. There's no wonder you can't find people to work, and that is so far from the truth. We are working hard to keep them safe. We want them to work for us for decades, and we need them to be able to come back just in the same condition they left the day before when they're working for us. We have automated our processes. We invested heavily in increasing the competitiveness of those processes, and that's where we're at today. And so when we present ourselves as a technologically advanced industry that's using cutting-edge equipment, engineering, and software to make sure that we're running well and we're globally competitive. One of the other questions I get, oftentimes actually from elected officials, is, Andres, you guys, the forest sector's made a lot of money in the past few years. Why do you need our help? Why can't you just pay everybody a whole lot more? And the reason why is because we are a globally competitive industry. We've got to compete against the mill in Brazil, the one in China, the one in Europe, the one in South America, right? That's how we compete. A lot of our facilities are owned by larger corporations that have facilities spread out everywhere. The moment that the economy slows down and we start getting into that recession world or whatever it is, the very first mill that gets shut down is your highest cost mill. That's not where we want to be. We don't want to see CEOs in some other part of the country saying, you know what, we've got 15 mills, we only need 12. Which ones are our highest cost ones and which ones are the ones we can shut down? We can't put ourselves in a position of being uncompetitive by just saying we're going to pay everybody more, right? That's not how industries survive. That's not how they grow, and that's not how they remain an attractive investment as well for Wall Street and other folks too as well. So we are very focused on making sure we're efficient, we're safe, and we're competitive. And that's what's going to keep us growing in the state. That $39 billion number I shared with you earlier, when I came into this job about 8 years ago or so, we were at $24 billion in the economic impact of the state. There's not a lot of industries out there that can tell you they've grown by that margin, $15 billion in about 8-10 years. And so we are poised to continue growing. The last thing I'll mention to you is that we are talking very closely with our technical schools in that space too as well, to be able to position ourselves, hopefully to help them help us back in turn. In other words, that public-private partnership that is so critical to what we do. I'll mention this before I get into the data on what you'll be able to see later this year. We're at the cutting edge of where we can be. There's a company called Stora Enso, one of the largest forest products companies in the world, based out of Europe. They are starting to build electric vehicle batteries out of the lignin that comes from our trees. So we can build car batteries. Think about that, right? Out of trees that we grow here in this state. We don't have to go mine them and depend on some other country to do that. We can do that here in this very state. So we have got the potential to be a massive, if we're already massive, even bigger powerhouse for the type of economy and the type of jobs and the type of world we want to live in. And we can do that forever as long as we continue to foment these policies that allow us to grow a tree, harvest a tree, haul the tree, and turn it into something we all need. So with that, I'll just close out here. This is a glimpse of the work that Carl Vinson did for us. As I mentioned, our production of 48 million tons in 2022 is a kind of the growth of timber that we have. It's expected to be steady over the next 5 years. You can see here, this is a progression of productivity for loggers. You say, okay, Andres, this is a great example of how our industry has continued to evolve and become much, much more efficient. So it shows that productivity going from roughly 4 tons of timber an hour to about 6.5 tons of timber an hour. So a pretty steep jump there for us. We're starting to get to the point where there's not a lot more we can claw out of this, right? But we've gone from larger crews to smaller crews that are using best available technology to make sure that we're sustainable and productive. And you can see also we're trying to understand where we're at in terms of the age of our labor force. And you can see that the logging and trucking force in our state it tends to be a little bit older, a little bit on the skew older than other parts of our industries too as well, and an important force for us to understand. Why does that matter? Because it means that the quit rate will be higher too as well. People don't want to work forever. They do want to retire at some point in their lives, right? And so what we see here is our historic turnover in this part of our supply chain has been about 8%. It's bumping up to about 15%, right? So that's a lot of people that we have to think about, who's going to cut and haul these trees to make sure that we have toilet paper, right? We can't let our mills run inefficiently. If they don't have enough wood, we end up in a position where, once again, they're not competitive next to their peers. So very important numbers for us there to think about. And then when we look 5 years out, how many of these kind of logger type positions that we need? These numbers are still preliminary. They might be a little bit low in our opinion. But when we think about the logger that then employs 4 or 5 or other folks out there, this gives you a sense of going from about 250 that we'd need now on an annual basis to about 520 or so on an annual basis. Pretty big jump for us, right? Are our technical schools, are our communities built to do this today? They're not. We've only got a couple of programs out there that are addressing this at a very local level. Our technical schools are willing and ready, but we've got to do more to advance and accelerate this. We know we've built programs that work. What's it take for us to duplicate those across the state for us? And so you'll see similar studies like this coming out at the end of this quarter, focused on forestry, and at the end of the year in the fourth quarter, focused on manufacturing, to help us understand how many thousands of people we need across our entire supply chain to remain competitive, and really just to remain in some regards too as well. So with that, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to present here to you today, and thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, gentlemen? Any questions? No. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Anderson. I appreciate it, and I really do appreciate the value of our forestry industry in this state. It's great. Talking about workforce, and you covered it very, very well. Warnell School and forestry in Athens. Do you know what the number of students graduated from there, what the trend has been there, or other type forestry degrees at other institutions? What other institutions do a higher type education program for forestry?
Yeah, I'd probably get the exact numbers not correct, so I don't want to quote those. But I'd say it's probably in the range of somewhere between 80 and 150 a year or so, if you lump in PhDs and master students and things of that nature, with kind of a base salary starting at probably maybe $55,000, $60,000, and then ranging up to for PhDs, often much higher in the $100,000 range or so. But a lot of the master students are coming in out at $70,000, $75,000, $80,000 a year, roughly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wow, I'm still digesting what you just said. How far out do you think the technology, just the one that you just kind of threw out there? So we're the number one producer of timber, pine trees in the country, and it seems like it's by a pretty good margin. And one of the things, and we just had the head knocker in the state of Georgia with Kia here, and EVs, and we've got a meeting tomorrow looking at charging and EVs, and I mean, is this something that some mad scientist in the library in a laboratory come up and said, potentially, like the George Jetson, we'll all be traveling around in a. Is this something that we feel pretty confident that in the near future, this is, rather than mining these materials in foreign lands, that perhaps the state of Georgia could be ground zero for.
Absolutely, yes, sir. I'll give you two direct examples of that. Volvo recently signed a joint venture with Stora Enso, the company that has figured out how to make this, and they've figured out how to get the scale on it. So Volvo is putting their money into this today, and so that's a done deal. It's public. They put it out probably about a month ago or so. The second one is, once again, we have these assets homegrown in this state. We've got 12 pulp and paper mills in and around Georgia that, and if you include everything outside of the state that buys timber from us, probably more like 16. But one of our companies is Rayonier Advanced Materials, and you can go to the website and you can see that in France they have the big mill in Jessup, Georgia, and then they have another really big one in Amelia Island, just across the border. But they have a mill in France, and the French government actually has mandates that say, okay, you need to use a certain amount of biofuels. So they've helped encourage investment and consumption of biofuels. Well, Rayonier Advanced Materials in their French mill is building a biofuels facility that can produce a bioethanol that goes right into your car. So a drop-in ethanol that goes right into your vehicle. And that can also be further refined into biojet. And so, if you think about the impact of being able to, the largest airport in the world here, by volume, passenger volume, consumes a lot of jet fuel, and then the number one forestry state producing a lot of trees. There's a tremendous potential for us as a state to not only power new vehicles and new technology like electric vehicles, but also traditional vehicles that we've got already through ethanol and biojet, hopefully in the future. So, and these are companies that already have assets here, already operate here, and want to grow, right? They want to continue being competitive and moving into the space. That company, Rayonier Advanced Materials, if you have an iPhone, the touch screen on your phone the materials came from that mill in Jessup. And so think about the billions of people around this world that are touching Georgia trees every day when they're texting out or typing or doing whatever, swiping, right?
Can I have one follow-up, Mr. Chairman? So in terms of, carbon credits or carbon offsets, how many more trees do we plant than what we harvest?
So we're probably harvesting around, if you want to say we're planting between that 200 to 300 million, it's going to be about a third or so of that number that we're harvesting. And so we're outgrowing what we do every day. We outgrow what we harvest by 48% roughly in terms of volume, but in terms of numbers of trees, it'll be a little bit lower than that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there further questions? Okay, so we'll have you back as well. I hope you will continue to monitor the committee after your presentation today. It's been very helpful. So one of the things I want to ask, relative to, when we get back and when we start, here's what we're doing now, here's how we can match up, here's how we can do better. So I'm guessing the harvesting, kind of some of the stuff you see across social media now that they'll is these large devices that just kind of go up and they hug a tree and they cut it off and they turn it sideways and they roll it down there and rip all the limbs off. That's the technology you're moving toward. That's when you're talking about you're removing people off the ground that used to cut down the trees. And
that's right.
Unfortunately, as things happen, a tree would bump into somebody. You're trying to remove all that, but you need people to learn how to operate that device.
Operate and fix.
Fair enough. Yeah, obviously. So my question is, when we go to the next meeting of how to do this is, it's obviously a very specialized thing, right? I mean, you teach somebody how to build a bulldozer, they can build a basement, they can build a road, they can build this is taking down trees. So I hope the industry is looking with us about how to, kind of partner there with it, as opposed to us to kind of staff up to purchase those types of machines, or there's demos or not demos, but augmented reality kind of use of that. So I'd love to hear about how we're doing that on the ground. And then from a forestry situation, I'll go back to the recruitment deal. I mean, when I first got here and Dr. Adams was at the University of Georgia, one of the questions I asked him was, are we trying to make Georgia, the Harvard of the South? Or are we going to keep to our mission? We're the largest land grant institution east of the Mississippi, or we're going to teach people how to grow pine trees. I actually see it if you would go back and play a committee meeting. And so my question is to not write checks that President Moorhead has to cash over in Athens or the regents, but if we're slow in that funnel of producing those folks in that area, is that because there's lack of people going into the field or lack of faculty in the field to teach it? So I know you don't have those answers today, but as we move forward, would love to talk to you about that.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for the gentleman? If not, you've sort of gotten us back on time, so we thank you. For this, and we thank all the foresters out there for growing the trees. I want to learn more about how you make a battery out of a tree. I don't mean that in a flippant thing. I mean that's just pretty neat. So I'm going to do that. We're going to move on now with Textron and Specialized Vehicles. Brandon Haddock, are you here, Brandon?
Good morning. I'm Brandon Haddock. I'm the Director of Communications for Textron Specialized Vehicles in Augusta. And I really want to thank the committee for your hard work and everything you're doing to make sure that Georgia and companies like ours have educated, engaged, trained, and reliable workers that possess the skills and talents we need to support our customers and grow our business. And certainly want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. To start, I want to tell you a little bit more about who we are. We trace our roots to the founding of the E-Z-Go Golf Car Company in Augusta in 1954, and we have been in Augusta ever since. Augusta is our hometown. We're very proud to call Augusta our home. But today we employ more than 2,000 people across the state of Georgia. We have about 1,700 employees in Augusta. We are Augusta-Richmond County's largest industrial employer. And we also have about 300 employees in Cartersville in a new plant that we just opened earlier this year. It's about 227,000 square feet, and it produces aviation ground support equipment, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a few minutes. Well, you know, when we talk about aviation ground support equipment, well, I'll start with Augusta. We manufacture E-Z-Go golf cars and Cushman utility vehicles in Augusta today. It is the only manufacturing site for E-Z-Go golf cars in the world. So we manufacture over 100,000 vehicles a year. Every E-Z-Go golf car that you see anywhere in the world, and we do ship and sell all over the world, is manufactured in Augusta. In Cartersville, we manufacture ground support equipment. All the things that when you're sitting at the gate of your airplane, looking out the window, you see running around the plane, getting it ready to go. Aircraft pushbacks, baggage and cargo tractors, air starts to get the jet engines running, de-icers even. We are proud to count among our customers almost all the world's major airlines and air freight companies, as well as all four branches of the U.S. Armed Forces and the militaries of many of our allies around the world. Again, almost all of the ground support equipment that we build and that we sell all over the world is built here in Georgia, in Cartersville. We do have a small facility in Sweden that makes a very specific line of de-icing equipment, but everything else we build and ship all over the world is built in Cartersville. And we actually do build de-icers in Cartersville as well. I know it may sound strange to build de-icing equipment in Georgia, but we do it, and it works very well. We've been very fortunate recently, I think, in that we have not faced some of the labor crunches, or quite the labor crunch that some of our fellow Georgia companies have faced. But we know as we look to the future that we are going to need a steady pipeline of talented workers across a number of fields and disciplines to support our business. In the manufacturing sector today, the most consistent challenge we face is finding and recruiting workers with specialized knowledge and skill sets. Welders, industrial paint technicians, machinists, fabricators, and specialists in advanced plastics and advanced materials and processes such as injection molding. We are not solely an assembler. We don't just buy components from all over the place and bring them to Augusta or Cartersville and bolt things together. We fabricate a significant percentage of the content in our vehicles. Raw bar stock comes into our facility every day, and we cut that, bend that, weld that, paint that, and turn that into a golf car on the back end. We build our own frames, our own brake drums, our own steering components, and many other parts and components of the vehicles that we build. And so we need those specialized skill sets and capabilities. We have traditionally enjoyed strong relationships with our technical colleges, both Augusta Technical College as well as Chattahoochee Technical College, and very much appreciate their efforts and their initiatives to train the workforce of the future and keep a steady pipeline of workers to feed manufacturers like us. We're very excited by the plans for a new advanced manufacturing and engineering technology facility at Augusta Tech, and certainly hope that comes to fruition and appreciate the efforts of the committee to support that endeavor. But I know that I'm talking to the Higher Education Committee, but I have to say that we have to do more at the K-12 level to introduce and engage our kids about careers in manufacturing. If we wait until they're a high school graduate, it's too late. We need to capture these kids earlier in the pipeline, expose them to careers in manufacturing, to what a career in manufacturing can mean from a career opportunity standpoint, from a personal growth standpoint, and get them engaged and involved and ready to work in a manufacturing career. And frankly, as I think all of you know, help to educate parents as well about the promise of a manufacturing career so that parents understand that there are viable and lucrative careers in manufacturing in our state. We see some opportunities to work with our technical colleges and high schools and K through 12 systems to develop manufacturing laboratories that take assembly lines that may be 50 or 100 stations long and boil those down to 5 to 10 stations so that we can give students with exposure to roles in advanced assembly and manufacturing support. You know, these kinds of laboratories could replicate on a small scale a manufacturing environment and give kids, students, key skills such as workplace safety, proper tool usage, and interpreting and following work instructions so that they're better prepared and equipped to move into a manufacturing career and have exposure to manufacturing work even before they graduate from high school. But I have to say that the technical skills on their own are not enough. You know, the best technical skilled workers are the ones who are promoted into leadership positions, but those technical skills by themselves are not enough to make them successful as leaders in a manufacturing organization. And we want our workers to have a viable career path forward and have opportunities to advance. We will certainly provide them with leadership training, but any exposure that we can give students in the so-called soft skills before they get to us, skills like how to conduct a performance evaluation, how to have a crucial conversation with an employee, how to show empathy for others, how to lead in a disciplined and cohesive workplace culture and manufacturing environment. Those are the skills that will give them runway to long and fruitful careers in manufacturing beyond just the entry-level position. So as we think about our curriculum and our curricula in the K through 12 system as well as the technical colleges and other institutions, you know, I want to make sure that we do think about skill sets beyond simply the technical skills needed to do the job. How do we train these students to be leaders in manufacturing environments, to be the kind of leaders that we need in our organization, and to have runway in their careers to advance and grow as they move forward. Now, we all know that technology is transforming everything we do, and certainly manufacturing is no different. We know that we're going to need more engineers and IT experts to help build, manage, and exploit the systems that we use to operate our factories and manage the digital supply chain. As we look ahead, we need experts in enterprise resource management systems such as SAP, people who know how to manage those complex systems and also how to integrate and interface those systems with other software and hardware platforms that we use across our operations. We found Georgia Southern University to be an excellent source of SAP experts. They have a fantastic SAP curriculum that we have mined and hired many talented young employees and new graduates into our company from. And we need more of that across the entire system. We need data analysts who know how to access and interpret the reams of data that we use to ensure that we are operating efficiently and effectively. And we need programmers who can code for the programmable logic controllers that keep our factories' robots operating effectively and in unison to maintain an orderly flow of goods through our facilities. Beyond our needs for, we need mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and material scientists, but we also need cybersecurity experts and software engineers who can keep the systems that operate our vehicles safe and secure in an increasingly networked and autonomous world. If you step behind into the operator seat of our ground support equipment, our large de-icers, even our large aircraft pushbacks, you'll find that those operating controls are often touch screens now. They're computers and everything. Even easy-go golf cars are run by a computer. And increasingly, those golf cars are connected to each other, as well as to a centralized management system that can track where a vehicle is on a facility at any given time, so that operators can track productivity and safety. And those systems have to be secure, they have to be efficient, they have to operate well. So believe it or not, we do need, and we have a number of software engineers in our organization to code and program and safeguard those systems. And we'll need more of them in the future. We even need experts in machine learning so that we can teach the systems of the future how to recognize patterns and take actions autonomously on their own to keep our business processes and systems operating efficiently with minimal intervention and interaction. And we need project managers who have the skills and knowledge to drive and execute complex integrations and implementations of new platforms and processes across the many disciplines and functions of our business. I think just as importantly, and this is a deficiency that frankly we see in many of our new graduates today, we need every student, whether they major in supply chain management, finance, human resources, or another field, to have practical knowledge and hands-on experience with the technology they'll use in their career. Classroom knowledge alone is not enough. These graduates have to have knowledge of and exposure to the technologies they will use in their work. No one should graduate with a degree in supply chain management, for instance, without any experience working in an ERP environment like SAP. And yet we have new graduates who come to us with exactly that deficiency. They know in theory how a supply chain works, but when they have to put it into practice and touch fingers to keyboards and make it happen, they're not as well versed in making it go. And I cannot underestimate the need for our schools and institutions to help educate the workforce, again, in the so-called soft skills. It seems that as a society, we have deferred education in many of these realms to the employer. And we find ourselves educating our workforce, regardless of an employee's level of education, in basic life and career skills. Skills like financial literacy, wellness, empathy, and having respect and understanding for the differing experiences, viewpoints, and perspectives of others. Communication skills, whether it's writing an effective email or speaking in public. And frankly, even a basic work ethic. Understanding how to show up for work on time, focus on execution, and hit deadlines and deliverables. We often say, and I'm sure you've probably heard this saying or a similar one, that skills get you hired, but behaviors get you fired. And we need new graduates and employees to come into our system not only knowing the skills, but knowing the behaviors that we expect. Too often we see a gap in expectations between what we want our employees to deliver and what they're prepared to execute against. And we need our schools to prepare students and graduates for the realities and expectations of the working world and to help bridge that gap of expectations. I've intentionally tried to keep my comments brief. I welcome any questions that you have, but I do want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you today, and thank you for all of your efforts to help build the state's workforce of the future. That's a workforce that will benefit companies like ours, bolster our state's economy, and provide a better quality of life for our residents and employees. So thank you for all that you're doing, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for me at this time.
Committee have questions for the gentleman? I'm going to ask you one that you don't have to answer today. You can get back
Sure.
with me later. You mentioned in one particular, I think Georgia Southern, you said that had the SAP integration and to the manufacturing process. That's awesome. I know when I was getting out of school, when we had to walk uphill both. Yeah. You're talking about stone tablets and so forth. I understand, but no, seriously, the company that I went to work with had particular universities. I mean, there were people from different places, but I mean, there were groups around the University of Georgia, and I hate to say this, at the University of Florida, that where they kind of had graduates from there and they had worked out good. I'd be curious to see, and again, I'm not going to get you to put anybody on the spot today, but who those are and what those best practices are, because that doesn't make them that particular maybe component of our university system or our technical college system doesn't make the other ones not good at doing a job, but those ones particularly align with what you're needing there. And we do live in a world of specialization, and we ought to learn from that and try to do that. So I'd be interested as we go again to the second stage and we start fitting these sorts of things together. I would be interested on how that works. Anyone else? Questions for the gentleman? Well, I thank you, and I was used one of your products, I suppose, the other day on a golf course, and it was very interesting to me that it knew exactly where I was, because it told me I went too far, and it told me I was in a new action zone, and I was required to back out. If that tells anyone the skills at which I have managing the flight of a golf ball, the golf ball went someplace where the cart wouldn't. So
we have to keep them out of the ponds.
But now you had to go and do that. I did not think it floated, sir. But no, I do. Obviously, there's a lot of technology in there. I would not be surprised at some point in the future if they're virtually going to come to a golfer. That you go to your place and you press a button and the cart knows where you're at, and has that comes. Perhaps I will we'll see that one day. But thank you for doing that, and thank you for being part of Georgia and the commerce you bring to our state, the people you hire and the families that are supported by that.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
If I could, I just
Yes, sir.
wanted to address what you said earlier, and I'm happy to share more detail. We do recruit regionally and nationally. We recruit from pretty much all of the major academic institutions in the university system of Georgia. I mentioned Georgia Southern.
Sure.
The University of Georgia has been a tremendous source of talent for us, particularly in business and finance. It is a center of excellence for our company in finance. We do recruit engineers from Georgia Tech, as many as we can. As you know, engineers from Georgia Tech tend to be in very high demand, and so there's a very competitive market for those graduates, but we try to hire as many as we can. And we also hire in automotive engineering from Clemson University and the Advanced Automotive Center that Clemson has established, as well as some of the Big Ten institutions, Michigan State and other schools in the Big Ten and in the Rust Belt that have significant automotive programs. And software engineering, Purdue is a significant source of talent for us. A Purdue software engineer is somebody who is in very, very high demand, and they have an extremely strong reputation for computer engineering and software engineering. So those are just some of the institutions that we recruit from, but I'd be happy to discuss that in more detail. I did, since we were talking about batteries coming from trees earlier, which is also a technology I'm very interested in. I did want to quickly mention electrification. Electrification is something that is incredibly important to us as a company. Obviously, we've been building electric golf cars since the very first day we were in operation. But we're not just electrifying golf cars today. In fact, one of our biggest focuses is electrifying ground support equipment. As you talk to airlines and airports, they are under tremendous pressure to reduce their carbon footprint. And so one of the opportunities they have is to electrify the equipment that they use to keep their operations running. So in fact, we just recently announced a partnership with General Motors and another company, Powertrain Control Solutions, to implement General Motors' lithium battery technology and systems into our ground support equipment vehicles. And so as we look at that from an education need, and I know that's something you're looking at as well as a committee, know that electrification doesn't just start and stop where the roadway stops. It's a much broader market. And so anything we can do to build our talents around electrification in the transportation industry as a state will be advantageous, not just to all of the manufacturers who are locating here, but to existing companies like ours. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We
Thank-
appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to move directly into this. This would be our final presenter before lunch. No pressure, Mr. Church. Brian Church is the CFO with Phoebe Putney Health System. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Church.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. My name is Brian Church. I am the Chief Financial Officer and Administrative Officer for Phoebe Putney Health System, based in Albany, Georgia. Mr. Scott Steiner, our CEO, was scheduled to be with you today. Unfortunately, Scott had a family emergency and had to be with his family this morning. I'll do my best to stand in for him, and I do, sir, know I'm between you and your lunch, and that is not a good place to be. Chairman Martin, the members of the Higher Education Workforce Development Subcommittee, thank you very much for the opportunity today to share with you the workforce challenges and opportunities that we're seeing in healthcare. Phoebe Putney Health System is a not-for-profit healthcare delivery system that serves a population of more than 800,000 residents in 42 counties throughout southwest Georgia, with more than 4,500 employees. The system includes 4 hospital campuses, family medicine clinics, rehabilitation facilities, and specialty physician offices. Phoebe Physicians, our employed physician group, includes over 300 employed clinicians who work in 43 clinics in 9 counties in South Georgia. Phoebe also recently invested about $1 million in 2 mobile wellness clinics to bring health care to underserved communities throughout southwest Georgia. Phoebe's facilities, advanced medical technologies and treatments, and highly qualified professionals had distinguished the system as a healthcare leader in South Georgia. Phoebe is a comprehensive teaching hospital as well for the entire southwest corner of Georgia. Since 1993, the Family Medicine Residency Program has graduated over 125 physicians in rural southwest Georgia. These residents spent 3 years in Albany treating patients and honing their skills. 72% of those physicians are still practicing in southwest Georgia. Phoebe is proud to support area colleges' healthcare programs by providing valuable hands-on education and research opportunities. Phoebe also partners with state medical and pharmacy schools, MCG and UGA School of Pharmacy, as on-site training facility, and offers convenient housing close to the hospital for those students. Through Phoebe's robust offerings, area college and high school students studying nursing, physical therapy, and other medical-related field experience real-world clinical training under the direction of a highly qualified education team at our newly constructed state-of-the-art Simulation and Innovation Center. Mr. Chairman, we have prepared a presentation. I'd like to review that with the committee. Thank you.
Of course. Here we go.
Look at that. Just hit enter, I guess.
Yes. Sorry. All right. Yeah, I did the.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank
Yep,
you so
okay.
much. Just to recap and give you some highlights about our system in southwest Georgia in terms of the number of beds and the births and the number of people we're fortunate and blessed enough to take care of. Just to give you kind of a map geographically of where we're located in Dougherty County and the surrounding counties that we take care of. Many of the counties around Dougherty County had hospitals, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, rural critical access hospitals that for one reason or another have closed. So we find ourselves taking care of a greater and greater number of people. What I'm really here to talk to you about today is going to be probably no surprise with what we've all been through the last couple of years. COVID has had quite an impact. This slide really highlights for you what we're up against in healthcare in Georgia. In the country, it's estimated there's almost 1.1 million nursing vacancies today across hospitals. Specifically in Georgia, there's about 28,000 current 2-day openings that are posted in Atlanta and throughout Georgia for nurses. The projection that we have is about an 80,000 shortfall by 2030. At Phoebe, specifically in our system, we have 300 openings. We could hire 300 nurses tomorrow. I was interested about the conversation about trees turning pretty much into anything. If we could figure out how to turn trees into nurses. We got a beautiful Procter & Gamble plant down in Albany. We'll figure it out with those folks in the Marine base. But the cost has just become unbelievable for healthcare, and I'm sure you all are hearing it from your hospitals in your areas. We've seen a jump. So a traveler or a contract nurse pre-COVID was somebody that would come to a hospital for like a 13-week stint. They generally make about $65 an hour. The company that they work for would probably get about 30% of that, and the nurse would get the rest. These were traditionally, people that wanted to see the world. They wanted to, bounce around the country and travel. Generally, they didn't have kids. They were just enjoying their early 20s or early 30s. What we found now after COVID, it's become quite a cottage industry. Private equity has entered the market in terms of contract nursing, and we're seeing rates now as high as $190 to $200 an hour, specifically during the last surge. Many hospitals in Atlanta were paying that during the Delta and Omicron surge. Rates today are kind of fallen a little bit, but they're still at about $120 to $130 an hour. So all these vacancies in Georgia right now are being filled with contract labor from other states. So whether that be Florida, Alabama, South Carolina, we are not able to meet the need in our state for contract labor, and the financial impact that that's having on Phoebe and other health systems is pretty drastic. I stole a couple of Chris Clark's slides, so I'll have to apologize to him ahead of time. But I found this fascinating. A couple weeks ago, Chris had a big legislative lunch in Macon, and I had never seen this position this way before. But healthcare as an infrastructure item, I've historically always, known infrastructure in Georgia to be the wonderful ports we have in Savannah, the wonderful airport we have in Atlanta, the roads and highway system for our farmers. I never thought about healthcare as infrastructure, but Chris was very articulate that, new employers that want to come to Georgia want to make sure that their employees can be taken care of, and healthcare has become a key infrastructure item that new employers and those relocating or wanting to keep their businesses in Georgia are looking at. When you talk about the war for talent, the Georgia Chamber, this also was somewhat shocking to me. Their projection for 2025, the number of healthcare jobs that we're going to need to add to the state. The Georgia Chamber is proud to tell you that there's going to be 1 million more people that are going to be coming to Georgia, and that's a wonderful thing. Predominance of those are going to be around the greater Atlanta area, but also in Savannah and a couple places in South Georgia. But we don't have enough people right now, and we're going to need 122,000 more to take care of the people that are coming and relocating to Georgia. I was shocked at how that dwarfs manufacturing, construction, and logistics. And some of the other projections in terms of where Georgia labor needs are going to be are also pretty shocking, but healthcare is definitely going to be up there in terms of our key needs. You all are very familiar with rural healthcare needs, and you all have also participated in many efforts for broadband access in rural healthcare, and I can tell you it's much better than it was 5 years ago. But we also have to be mindful of rural communities that have a critical access hospital, a 25-bed hospital that takes care of patients. It's truly their only emergency room for maybe 100 miles. Without a proper workforce, those hospitals will not be able to remain open, and they certainly cannot pay the current contract labor rates of $120 an hour in those communities. So there is immense pressure on rural health care in Georgia. This was an article that I think, I won't read the whole thing to you, but I think it succinctly highlights kind of what we're up against. This is from Becker's, which is a prominent hospital magazine. The interest is there. With enrollment and applications rising last year, however, U.S. nursing schools turned away 80,000 qualified applicants from baccalaureate and graduate nursing programs in 2019 because of insufficient resources such as faculty, numbers, clinical sites, classroom space, and finances, according to the American Association of Colleges and Nurses. There is not a school I know of that isn't desperately looking for nursing faculty. The limited resources severely limit how many students schools can accept, and in some cases disrupt classes themselves. We are absolutely seeing this with the partners I'm going to share with you down in South Georgia. Nobody has enough faculty. They all want to open up more slots in nursing, but they cannot get the faculty with the current programs that they have in place. It's shocking to us that there's 80,000 kids that wanted to be a compassionate caregiver that were turned away in this country, and many in Georgia are facing this. If we could just open up more spots in our colleges and universities. So the numbers I'm going to share with you over the next couple slides are probably the most stark and concerning. When you look at Georgia, Georgia ranks in the bottom 10% of all 50 states for the total number of registered nurses compared to its population. So not the bottom 50% or the bottom 25%. We are in the bottom 10%. An avid SEC watcher myself, I was even more upset to see that UGA definitely dominates the Southern Eastern Conference, but in terms of nursing, North Carolina, Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi all have more nurses per 1,000 population than Georgia. We definitely have some work to do and need some help and some assistance with our colleges and universities to get that number where it needs to be. We want to lead the Southeast United States in the number of nurses per population. Here's the Georgia Center of Nursing Excellence dashboard. This said that faculty vacancy rate is about 8%. I would challenge that down in South Georgia. When we talked to Albany State University, Fort Valley State University, who's starting a new nursing program, Georgia Southwestern University, who's starting a new ASN program, Albany Technical College, everyone has at least 40 to 50% of their faculty positions open and are trying to actively recruit for faculty. They just cannot get the needed faculty to open up more slots. And the reason that's important is with the Georgia Board of Nursing, every faculty member allows you to add 20 to 25 more spots. So without the faculty, you may have the clinical space, but you can't actually add the spots to your college or university. So faculty is really the key to helping solve our nursing shortage in Georgia.
So I'm going to break my own rule
Yes,
here
yes.
and interrupt you just for a second in the middle of it, because I want to pose a question to you. Do you see that because some of your, nursing faculty typically is a trained nurse? Most all the time, if they're still currently licensed. I guess I don't know if you have to be a licensed nurse to be a faculty member, but presumably they would have an active license in most or all cases. Do you see that because the salary, if you will, the price of the traveling nurse, as you said, went from $65 to $190 an hour, is all of a sudden like, okay, I can teach here for this, or I can go out there and be a nurse for 3 times this? Is that part of where the faculty's lost, or is it through retirement, aging out?
So you nailed one of the key issues, and one thing Phoebe has actually had to do with Albany Tech and Albany State is we've had to subsidize. We've actually had to provide and say we will cover an additional $10,000 or $15,000 per faculty member, so that you can actually go and recruit people that will want to teach. So you're right; they're unable with the current pay scale to be able to attract, given all the opportunity that's out there across the country to travel and to do other things. You have to have a master's degree to teach. One of the other things that we need help with, and the Georgia Board has been nice down in South Georgia to help give us some part-time waivers. But one thing we've done with our local colleges and universities is we've said, can we have some of our nursing directors, we'll pay them 8 to 5, and then we'll pay them on top of that to work on nights and weekends, for you and your program. So we'll have a shared employee. There's a number of hurdles to overcome to do that, and we had to get some waivers because currently they're only allowed to have a certain number of part-time. They can only have, I think, 25% part-time faculty to be able to add to their enrollment. We need some help from the Georgia Board of Nursing to be able to change some of our rules so that we can have more partnerships with hospitals and health systems to provide more faculty to the colleges and universities. I hate to say it, but we're almost back in the 80s when hospitals and health systems had to have their own schools of nursing. I'd much rather partner, though, because the current academic organizations in Georgia are so much better than hospitals having to start their own.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that, and don't hate to say anything. We need to hear it all. Nobody's taking any of this as a personal. There are obviously known constraints, and that's what we want to hear about and met. So from a and this is why I don't stop people in the middle and ask, because one thing leads to another. But you say the Board of Nursing needs some help, and are there rules based on statutes, or have they kind of gone into the land of their own rulemaking?
Yeah, so I'm probably not the best expert.
Okay, well, I'll let you off the hook on that.
Yes.
We'll trace that in down later, because you all know what I'm thinking. So carry on.
Yes, sir. So when we look at some of the bedside nursing shortage impacts, you all know this and from many other industries, but healthcare has that ripple effect in terms of jobs that it creates, right? So we have to have manufacturers that produce goods for us. We have to have services, EVS services, and all that creates to the economy when healthcare is able to continue to grow. Typically in rural communities, 10 to 15% of the jobs are in healthcare. Healthcare in a lot of the communities down in South Georgia is the #1 employer. It is the basis for those communities. Senator Dean Burke, who is a big friend of Phoebe down in Bainbridge, will tell you that hospital is key to Bainbridge's survival in attracting new businesses to rural Georgia. So it's so key to the whole state, but I think what I'm worried about more than anything the next 5 years is what COVID is going to do to the rural community, specifically healthcare in Georgia, and what effect it'll have and what that'll mean if we don't support it. Another element that we don't talk a lot about, though, is physicians. Our physicians are frustrated. I had a conversation with a hospitalist on Friday that was just about ready to bag it in and move to Florida because of all the nursing shortages, and he is just struggling, and he struggled the last 2 years because when there's not enough nurses, the physicians are having to pick up the slack, and they're having to think ahead of time to make sure that there's not patient harm. So our physicians are also struggling in this community. I think the state has done a wonderful job with the Physician Workforce Board to add physicians to the state, but our physicians are struggling with this nursing shortage as well. In terms of the COVID-19 care, one thing that concerns us is really patient safety. So when you have these contract travelers in your hospital, they're licensed nurses. There's nothing wrong with them. They have the same credentials that our current nurses do, but you all know, you all have been on team sports in the past. When you have a team of nurses that have worked together for 2 or 3 or 4 years, they know the doctors that are around and on the floor. They create that camaraderie. They know how doctors treat patients, that they know what to look for, they know what the warning signs are. We think it makes us less safe in Georgia to not have a stable workforce that we're producing ourselves, that is in our hospitals taking care of our families, our mothers, brothers, sisters. I think it puts us at risk from patient safety if we don't solve this problem. So I've just unloaded on you a bunch of problems, and I didn't want to come with just problems. I wanted to talk a little bit about some potential policy actions and some solutions that we've done down in South Georgia that may help this commission in terms of your evaluation. So I do not know the Georgia code like I probably should, but there are some current sections that we think can be amended in terms of current statutes that could include nursing educators, that would allow them to have loan forgiveness, that would encourage them to be faculty members that are already on the books that you all could take a look at that might be able to help add faculty to the university and college system. I talked about the nursing, the Board of Nursing, looking at the ratios. They've been considering currently going from 1 to 20 to 1 to 25. There's also a need for biology instructions and tutors. One thing, we had a meeting last summer with all the college presidents and universities in South Georgia. I want to say about 15 of them attended, and they kept telling us that there's so many students that are compassionate, that are caring, that want to be part of healthcare, but they just need that little bit of extra help after they get the K-12 education. They need a little bit extra biology. They need a little bit extra. So coming up with some programs post-high school to help them bridge that gap is very important. One thing that we've struggled with that we think would be very helpful with the college and university system is a comprehensive dashboard to inform you all about the faculty vacancies across the state, the number of slots that are not being filled. We have been unable to find one. We think that that's an action that needs to happen so that we can be transparent with ourselves across the state of really which universities and colleges are struggling getting faculty and filling up their nursing slots. And then some of the social and economic drivers, some state-sponsored incentives, to encourage people to become registered nurses, looking at those in disadvantaged communities, and then also addressing some of the mental health needs. On a previous slide I showed you, a lot of people have stepped away from healthcare completely because of COVID. They just were pushed past their limit. We've had to hire 2 clinical social workers, and we have 2 pastors that we employ now. They are full up with their schedule with nurses and doctors, trying to help them deal with what they've seen and what they've had to deal with COVID and get them back engaged in the workforce. One thing that has challenged us is, as you all know, nurses are predominantly female. Females were at a significant disadvantage with COVID. A lot of them had to, go home and take care of their children that were pushed out of schools. A lot of them had to go home and take care of their elderly parents that they were afraid of getting COVID. So we've seen a lot of people move away from the workforce, and we've got to develop ways to provide, daycare and social services to those nurses so that they can come back to the workforce. Recruitment and retention, coordination, we think is a big part of this. I'll tell you, I've met with a number of college and universities presidents and staff over the last 2 years trying to figure out how to solve this problem in Southwest Georgia. The university and college system are some of the best people we have in Georgia. These educators are unbelievable. I mean, you marry them up with the compassion of healers and nurses. I mean, you get something dynamic going. But what we don't see, unfortunately, is a lot of coordination between the universities and colleges in terms of their marketing efforts, their sharing of resources. We think there's opportunity there for us to form coalitions of health systems and universities and colleges geographically to do some amazing projects that could potentially solve this problem. Reducing barriers for students. We talk about a mission criteria. One thing that I've been working on the last few weeks, it's just been an education for me, is I noticed that Tampa General in Tampa, Florida, was recruiting a lot of Puerto Rican nurses to Florida. So I said, well, why is Georgia not doing that? Why can Florida do that? Well, Florida has some laws back from the 80s that basically allow nurses from Puerto Rico to come to Florida with their license and not have to pass the NCLEX and have a license from Florida. So it's parity between Puerto Rico and Florida. We do not have that same parity in Georgia, and we see that as an opportunity to potentially get more students from Puerto Rico. We currently have about 60 international students from the Philippines that we have recruited over the last 2 years. We worked with Senator Ossoff. He helped us tremendously to get some of the red tape removed from the embassies to try to get more students from the Philippines. But the Philippines is kind of tapped out right now. Every hospital in the country, the Philippines produces more nurses per year than they actually have hospitals. So they actually are a net exporter of nurses. But that market is so tapped that we're having to look at other markets outside of Georgia to try to bring people to Georgia. So some parity with what some of the laws are in Florida in terms of those other provinces of the United States would drastically help us.
I'm gonna do it again.
Yes, sir.
Because I mean, you bring up something, and I want everybody to hear it. So what you're saying is we have a situation in Georgia where in Florida you could come from Puerto Rico to Florida. In Florida you could come from Puerto Rico to Florida, and your nursing degree that you received there is good, but it's not good in Georgia.
No, sir. You have to pass.
Are you familiar that we passed a few years ago that if you, and I believe nursing is one of the professions, help me out here, that if you moved into Georgia and you were married to a service person, you could immediately become a nurse. But we got pushback from the Board of Nursing, I believe, that if you move from that same state but you weren't married to a service member, it was unsafe for you to perform a nurse. And that's why, I mean, I know I'm pricking some fingers when I'm saying here, but if we're talking about workforce development, we're talking about getting people to help Georgians, we've got to take the fence out from around it. That, you can't on the one hand say we don't have enough of these, and then you have the people that are doing it, trying to keep people from getting into business. Everybody wants people to have the education to do it correctly, but being, married to a service member does not necessarily make one a better caregiver. I mean, I'm going to assume that your education. So I just wanted to probably shouldn't have, because I'll prick somebody's fingers and we'll start getting a lot of pushback in this committee. But we have to realize that matters. I mean, if you have the education to do the job, you ought to be able to do the job.
Well, and as health systems, Chairman, we have to work with the nursing board, and we have to say to them that we're open to longer orientations. Then for those, if they're concerned about the we'll have an extra 6 weeks of orientation before we assign that nurse a full patient load. We'll partner them up. We have to take some responsibility too to allow them to change those rules, and we're willing to do that and partner with them in the university system, because it's not just nurses, sir. Our general counsel talks a lot about her son that was deployed and came back and pretty much did everything as a field medic. He can do very little in our hospital, in our emergency room, and there's a bunch of people at the Marine base down in Albany that we think we could grab and bring over to healthcare, but right now there's no pathway for them to do that. So I talked a little bit about our partnerships. We will partner with anybody at this point in South Georgia that wants to create more nursing capacity. And we've had some very big successes. Fort Valley State University has never had a nursing program. Our board chair at Phoebe Sumter is a biology instructor there. He helped us come to the table and provide some financial resources for Fort Valley to start a nursing program. Georgia Southwestern I talked to you about earlier. We're helping them restart their ASM program that they shuttered a number of years ago. But all these institutions we have worked with. One of them specifically I want to talk about going back, maybe going forward, is the 4C Academy. So I've just unloaded a bunch of problems on you, but I also owe you a huge thank you, because we have an unbelievable college and career academy in Albany, Georgia. Unbelievable. The energy in that institution, the kids that come out of that college and career academy are ready for the workforce. We've taken it a step further. You gave us a tool. You gave us a foundation. We've built a Phoebe Health Career Pathway with the leadership of our what we call 4C, our College Career Academy in Albany. And we now have freshmen in high school, that when they graduate, they will have their core nursing complete. The only thing they won't have is microbiology, but they'll also have a certified nursing assistant license. So they're coming out of high school now prepared to easily transition into the nursing field, or they can transition into lab or pharmacy or to be a doctor. But that was a gift that you all gave Southwest Georgia and a huge investment that you all made in us. And we've taken that and we've honored it and we've built upon it. And I'd love for you all sometime to come down and take a look at what we've done with the Health Career Pathway at 4C Academy. I think you'll be very, very impressed. Mr. Chairman, I think that's all my time, and I'm more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have, sir.
You've got a couple of questions. I'm going to get to that, but I want to clarify my last statement because it's out there for the world to. I'm supportive of those nurses that come in that are married to service members. that just to be clear, I'm supportive of them having that ability. I'm also supportive of those that have the same education background to get that one day. And let me be further clear that I'm not sure that every version of nursing has that ability, because there are many to do that. So I don't want the Board of Nursing to come after me and say they did, because they are moving. They have a very high responsibility to make sure only qualified people get in the profession. So I just I want to be clear. I appreciate their work. I would like to see us move faster, and stronger. But just clarify the remarks, because the world we live in. Number 25, is that Chairman Perkle? Yes, sir.
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for presentation. Thank you for coming up. Driving that Atlanta traffic is not fun for a Southwest Georgia guy, is it?
I was telling somebody, thank God I have my truck, because the potholes around here, I mean, you need a truck. You need a truck. I mean, I hit them pretty hard.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes, sir.
I understand. It also makes you feel a little bit more powerful with all that traffic that we have.
I don't know
when
about
you
that.
bring a truck.
The lanes are smaller here too. You got to be real careful.
So a couple of points that you made that really struck home with me with the conversation I had in my district in South Georgia, dealing with travel nurses. So we do have a shortage of nurses. We have issues, and so that it compounds the problem. And you know this more than anyone in this room. So if a nurse is on a med-surg floor and she has 4 or 5 patients, she can look after the patients pretty well. But if they're not staffed up that night and she has 7, or he has 7 patients on a med-surg floor, you have potentially problems with safety profiles for the patient.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned physicians getting tired of that. Physicians don't. I'll go ahead and say it. It ain't the physician that is going to get put out in that. It's going to be the patient. And so, speaking as a father of a nurse and a son of a nurse, I will say that. So, when the travel nurses come in, I had actually a nurse told me this past weekend that she had some. She had some patient dealing. She had to become a patient of a hospital she did not work at that did not, they chose not to participate in the travel nursing program. And so all of the nurses there were employed by the hospital and not with another affiliation. And she said, man, they were all so nice. They were all so pleasant. They loved working there. And so the dichotomy is in other facilities where they do have also shortages and they fill those needs with outside nurses. There is not that team effort. And so I think the point that the chairman made is absolutely the right one. We should do what we can to eliminate this pinch point. If we have 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, whatever it is, people that would like to be nurses and they have the qualification to get into a program, but because the pinch point, if we can isolate it, and apparently we have, and work on that pinch point, we have people that are waiting in the queue to get in.
Yes, sir.
And the suggestions that you made and the suggestions that the chairman made are something that can have real-world application to a problem we all know exists. So thank you, and thank you, Chairman.
Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all the service that Phoebe Putney has provided for your community amidst this global pandemic. Second, I was wondering, especially when it comes to your recommendations, would Medicaid expansion help when it comes to addressing the workforce shortages, especially when it comes to nursing?
Yeah, so Medicaid expansion is obviously a big hot issue in terms of politics. One thing that the state is doing right now that will help us significantly, I think is appropriate to this board, is the Georgia Strong program. Georgia Strong is a supplemental payment program through Medicaid that currently Department of Community Health has approved and has sent off to CMS, and they've brought back one series of questions. All of the teaching hospitals in Georgia support that. The Georgia Hospital Alliance supports the Georgia Strong program. We see that as the quickest way to bring new federal dollars to the state to be able to implement these kind of teaching solutions that I mentioned. One thing I failed to mention is our partnership with Albany Technical College. We're hoping to get those dollars from the Georgia Strong program to help us do what's known as a living and learning community. Right across from our campus, we have an old middle high school that's been shuttered for 20-some years. It was built in early 1900s. We'd like to redo that project and have a living and learning community, bring Albany Tech's health science program to our campus on the first floor, and then have housing for students throughout the rural community on the second and third floor. The Georgia Strong program would be a huge program to help bring extra dollars to the Medicaid program, and we fully support that program.
Thank you. And last comment, Mr. Chairman, I would look forward to looking at some of the nursing board rules and regulations to help facilitate the process when it comes to addressing workforce needs in the state.
Yeah, and let me clarify, we are not in contention. I would do what the chairman did. We are not in contention with the Board of Nursing at all. They are our partners.
Duly noted.
We all need to change, and we know hospitals and health systems need to change too. So we're just asking for everyone to partner. And
I appreciate that, and that's what I wanted to be clear on. It's that they don't. The change to the bill that we want is that the nursing board didn't oppose or they didn't oppose it nor support it. When we had that, we addressed that over the last couple of sessions. But there are people in the world that did. And I just want to bring it out to be I'll just finish with saying this. If you're trained to be a nurse in whatever jurisdiction you're coming to Georgia, the fact that you are or are not married to a service member doesn't make you a better or a worse nurse. That's just all I'm getting at. Your education is your education. And I think you brought another very important thing here. The folks that come back that are out there treating war fighters on the battlefield, and us not providing them a pathway to help Georgians. That's right. Is a tragedy for Georgians as well as for those people that come back. And, we can work. I mean, we have a technical college system. We have professionals like yourself, university system, and we can do better with that. And we can put that great expertise to work. I'm going to, last question, the Secretary of the Committee, Representative Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You keep talking about the servicemen. It make me want to marry one.
Yes. If you did that, Representative, the hearts all over the Georgia would break.
Well, seriously, thank you for being here. And my new district housed Fort Valley State University and Southwest. I get it all twisted up. Georgia Southwestern. So I got to get used to that in my new district. So Dr. Weaver's going to kill me for messing up the name. But thank you for your work with both universities with the nursing program. You mentioned the challenges with the Board of Nursing. Are they aware of these concerns that you have? And if so, how have they addressed those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, they're very aware of the shortage in Georgia, and they have been partners at the table. They've granted some waivers to us, specifically down in South Georgia at Albany Tech and Albany State, to be able to try to add some of these part-time faculty. I think they understand the problem, Representative, and I think they know that they've got to work with us to modernize some of the rules and look at other states for best practices, because we don't want to be in the bottom 10% of number of nurses per population. And there's ways that we can improve that with the Board of Nursing at the table.
Okay, so they are aware. Okay, last question. Now, you mentioned the Georgia Strong program.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk just a little more about what's the status of that program now? I heard you mention you had to submit an application to the federal government.
So just to back up a little bit, this is a program that will help, I think, 23 teaching hospitals in Georgia. So it's not just about Phoebe. So it's about, Emory and
Yeah, if I can, if the representative doesn't mind, I'm going to let y'all through there. I've got some information that will have that come into the next meeting and drill down into that in larger detail. That's the sort of things that we're in the process of doing, which is the second meeting, and then even things that we want to expand on will be where our next meeting goes.
It's a great program, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions for the gentleman? Any other questions? I see no question. I thank you very much for this, and we'll just reiterate that neither you nor I have a problem with the Board of Nursing. and we'll invite them all to come back to the meeting and speak to us next year. No, in all seriousness, we will have groups like them to come back and tell us what's being done now to work on our workforce shortage and how we can assist them. I mean, it's not for us to sit here and tell them what they're not doing without opening up the dialogue and, hey, what do you need from the state legislature, whether it be statute changes or dollars to try to help it. But no, thank you very much, and we really appreciate that. With that, we're just a minute or two late. We're going to recess now for our lunch break. So we'll be back at 1 o'clock. We'll be back when 1 o'clock. If there's nothing further, we'll stand in recess until 1.